Chapter 464. The secret that had never been known by anyone was exposed by Rog, who had just met him. This made Dum, who was used to having everything in his hands, feel an instinctive threat. When Dum stood up and exuded a strong magic wave and killing intent, Rog's body also shone with a light blue light. Of course, Rog knew how his words would affect Dum. Although this would make Dum wary of him, it was the only trump card that could move Dum at the moment. In order to get Dum to cooperate with him, he could only choose to take the risk and try. Moreover, even if Dum really wanted to kill him, he had enough power to protect himself. Dum looked coldly at Rog across the long table as if he was considering his final decision. "Who are you?" Dum spoke again. Although it was Dum's first time meeting Rog, he was no stranger to Rog. In fact, he knew him very well. Since Rog appeared as the masked man, Dum had been paying attention to his existence and had even quietly investigated his past. However, like everyone else, Dum's investigation of Rog could only be traced back to the time when Rog was a private investigator. As for who he was before he became a private investigator and what kind of past he had, Dum did not obtain any useful information. In the beginning, Dum even suspected that Rog was an alien from another planet, just like Thor from Asgard. However, it did not take long for him to overturn this conjecture. A person who was greedy and lustful on Earth, who did whatever he wanted, and who was also extremely domineering, could not be an alien from another planet. An alien from another planet could not be so interested in the existence of Earth. Even if it was a disguise, it was impossible to disguise so thoroughly. Through the analysis of Rog's actions and the various signs shown in his daily life, Dum could be 100% sure that Rog was a pure Earthling who had lived on Earth since he was a child. After overthrowing the theory that Rog was an alien, Dum had also suspected that he was one of those supernatural cultivators with long lives. However, this conjecture was quickly overturned by him. From Dumu's point of view, although Rog was powerful enough, he wasn't steady at all. He didn't have the calmness and indifference of someone who had experienced the world. If he was not an alien, nor was he a cultivator who had lived in seclusion for many years, then it was very suspicious where Rog's strength came from. Doom knew that there were some geniuses in this world who were born far beyond ordinary people. He himself was a very obvious representative. However, Dum did not sense the aura of a genius from Rog. Coupled with the secret Rog had just revealed, Dum increasingly felt that he had signed a contract with the Lord of Hell, Mephisto. Because he had signed a contract with Mephisto's, his origins were a mystery, and he displayed great strength the moment he appeared. It was precisely because of this that he knew that his mother, Cynthia, had been imprisoned by Mephisto, and that he had a bet with Mephisto. Rog had publicly announced at the Thunder Secret Team's press conference that he was from a place called Konoha, and that he was the fourth Hokage of that mysterious hidden village. However, Dum didn't believe a single word of it. If there really was such a mysterious village on Earth, it was impossible for there to be no news of it at all. Even an existence like Camartage was more or less connected to the real world. Dum didn't think that the Konoha hidden village that Rog was talking about would be more mysterious and powerful than Camartage. "You don't have to look at me like that. I know you'll think I'm suspicious, and even wonder if I have something to do with Mephisto, and if I'm someone he specially arranged. I do have something to do with him, but it's not the kind of relationship you think." With that, Rog summoned the contract that he hadn't signed with Mephisto. "You've had a lot of dealings with Mephisto. You should be able to recognize his things." Under Rog's control, the unsigned parchment contract slowly floated in front of Dum. Then, the living room fell completely silent. Dum carefully checked the contract that floated over and confirmed its authenticity. In the end, Dum let the parchment contract float back to Rog. The magical fluctuations and killing intent emanating from his body completely disappeared, and he sat back on the high-back chair. "Although I don't know how you did it, you didn't sign a contract with Mephisto. You have no reason to return to hell." Dum said calmly. "Of course I have a reason to return to hell. You've also cultivated in the Himalayas, so you should have heard of the term inner demon. I don't want a crack to appear in my cultivation state, so I have to go to hell. Rog explained. He didn't make up the term inner demon, it really existed. Even if it wasn't an extraordinary person like them, it was possible for an ordinary person to have inner demons. Among them, the most common was the so-called eternal second place in sports competitions. The Himalayas? What's your relationship with Kamartaj? As a mage, it was impossible for Dum not to know about Kamartaj's existence. Ancient One is my teacher. With that, Rog stretched out his right hand and opened a small portal that only allowed one's arm to pass through. This portal magic was one of Mage Kamartaj's signature spells. Just like the ninja school's triple body technique, a mage who hadn't learned the portal magic couldn't be considered a real Mage Kamartaj. After hearing that Ancient One was his teacher and confirming the portal magic with his own eyes, Dum dispelled his suspicion that Rog was Mephisto's subordinate. Although he was still wary of Rog, one thing he could confirm was that Rog was a student of Ancient One and couldn't be one of Mephisto's men. The name of the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, was still very convincing in the extraordinary world, especially the magic world. Tell me about your plan. If it's reliable, I don't mind going to hell with you once. Dum took the initiative to ask about Rog's plan. Rog didn't hide anything and told him about the plan that originally belonged to Dum and Dr. Strange in his memory. But this time, the person who joined forces with Dr. Destruction Dum was no longer his junior brother, Dr. Strange, but himself. The plan sounds feasible, but the specific implementation steps still need to be carefully thought about. After listening to Rog's plan, Dum suddenly felt like his train of thought had been completely opened. All this time, he had only been thinking about how to defeat Mephisto, win the bet, and regain his mother's freedom. However, he didn't expect that there would be such an alternative way to save his mother. I agree to your plan. What do you want in return? Dum had investigated Rog, and of course he knew about Rog's strange commission, obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's very simple. I want all your magic cultivation information. In the beginning, Rog intended to get a promise from Dum. For example, he wanted him to promise that when Thanos attacked Earth, he would go all out against Thanos once, so as to achieve the tactical effect of using supervillains to fight supervillains. However, this reward was quickly rejected by him. Although the system will recognize the commission reward of the promise type, the problem is that the promise is a kind of reward with no fixed time. If Thanos never comes to Earth, he won't be able to receive Dum's promise, and he won't be able to get the commission reward given by the system, and he will always occupy the only commission slot. So, he directly changed his goal and changed the reward to Dum's magic cultivation information. Although Kamartaj doesn't lack this content, most of Kamartaj's magic belongs to the category of white magic. But Dum's magic is different. He is the kind of magic that doesn't refuse. Whether it is white magic or black magic, he has a lot of it here. And the commission reward is just a bonus. What he really wants is the ninja coins given by the system. He now has 660 unspent ninja coins. If he completes Dum's commission, he won't be too far away from 1,000 ninja coins. After he saves 1,000 ninja coins, he can exchange the Yin Kyubi in the system and let Yin and Yang Kyubi reunite as one. You have a big appetite, aren't you afraid of eating too much? Dum didn't doubt Rog. In his opinion, if Rog's reward was too low, then there would be a problem. He wasn't afraid of Rog's appetite, he was only worried that Rog wouldn't try his best. Although the plan proposed by Rog just now is very feasible, there is only one chance. If it fails this time, Mephisto will never be fooled a second time. A man should have a big appetite and a big dream. Rog replied with a smile. No problem, I agree, sign the scroll. As soon as Dum finished speaking, Rog threw the commission scroll that he had prepared long ago. More than 10 seconds later, a new commission appeared in the system's commission page. Commission content, assist Professor Dumb and let Cynthia's soul regain freedom, commission status, incomplete, commission reward, 250 ninja coins. Dumb's commission passed the judgment smoothly, and the system also gave a very reasonable commission reward. In a month, we will set off for hell. Throwing the completed commission scroll back to Rog, Dumb set the date of departure. Going to hell is not a trivial matter. Even Dumb needs to be prepared in advance. And unlike the previous gambles, Mephisto won't be as easy to talk to as before. No problem. After putting away the commission scroll, Rog opened the portal back to Konoha's headquarters and left Dumb's castle. After returning to Konoha, he first went to see the Fantastic Four who were adapting to their superpowers, and then teleported from the headquarters to Konoha's hidden village. Dumb is not the only one who needs to prepare in advance. Before going to hell, he also needs to prepare well. And there is one thing he didn't disclose to Dumb, that is, he plans to take something from Mephisto. Chapter 465. The last time he fought with Mephisto, he fully realized the gap between him and the Heavenly Father. Especially when this Heavenly Father was still on his home turf, he showed absolute dominance. Although he didn't go there to fight Mephisto this time, in order to ensure that his soul does not fall into the hands of Mephisto, he needs to make himself a little stronger. This time, Mephisto won't be as casual as the last time. Not to mention that Rog had just cheated him not long ago. In fact, strictly speaking, he didn't cheat Mephisto. Because in another month, he will go to hell again. After returning to Konoha, Rog went to see the progress of Hinata's android project. He had already received the Illusions Operational Matrix data, and the Cradle of Regeneration Engineering data, from Tani and Dr. Zhao Hailuan, and he had already asked number 2 to send it to Hinata. The only thing that hasn't been obtained yet is Dr. Banner's plan to implant artificial intelligence into organic creatures. Rog has a good relationship with Hulk, but his relationship with Dr. Banner is very average. And with a brutal case like Ultron in front of him, Banner was not very willing to give the plan to Rog. In Banner's view, Rog is more dangerous than Ultron. Rog didn't force Dr. Banner. When Dr. Banner clearly expressed his reluctance, he gave up the idea of getting the plan from Dr. Banner. The reason is simple, because he now has Mr. Fantastic Reed, who is no worse than Dr. Banner. Although Reed's awakened superpower is not very good, Reed's most precious thing is his cheat-like brain. Unlike Dr. Banner, Reed is proficient in almost all fields of science and technology. Some of the inventions he made can even compete with the gods. The smartest person on Earth, the number 1 genius in the Marvel world, God Reed, although these titles haven't appeared on Reed's head yet, as long as he doesn't die early, these titles will fall on his head sooner or later. Therefore, Dr. Banner's refusal will not affect Rog's next plan, and it won't even affect his mood. Men were creatures who would forget their old love once they had a new one. Dr. Banner is Rog's old love, and Reed is his new love. After Hinata put most of her energy into the androids project, the progress of the project improved significantly. Especially after obtaining the Illusion Vision's calculation matrix data and the Cradle of Regeneration's engineering data, the difficulties in the project were solved one after another. Rog didn't disturb Hinata for too long. After roughly understanding the progress of the android project, he went to his exclusive Naruto training room. Because he only had a month's time, he didn't plan to continue improving his bloodline and immortal body. His purpose this time was very simple, that is, to completely master the third form of Susanoo, that is, the form with black Tengu armor. The third form of Susanoo is also the final form mastered by Itachi. Compared to the second form, which had flesh and meridians, the third form, which had the black Tengu armor, not only had its defense greatly increased, it could also use more weapons. For example, Tatsuka sword, Yata no Kagami, Kagami sword, and so on. Rog has always been curious about whether he, who has a similar Mangekyo pattern to Itachi, can awaken Tatsuka sword and Yata no Kagami like Itachi. As long as the target is stabbed, the target can be sealed forever in the dreamlike world of genjutsu. Yata no Kagami can change its attributes according to the attribute of the attack, reflecting or defending all attacks. As long as one of them can be awakened, the strength of Rogue Susanoo will skyrocket. If he can awaken two at the same time, his Susanoo will be almost invincible like Itachi's Susanoo. Note 1, although in this world, the so-called forever and everything of Tatsuka's sword and Yata no Kagami is unlikely to become a reality. But even if it's not so absolute, it's enough to make his Susanoo's strength qualitatively improve. Coming to the exclusive training room, Rogue didn't hesitate and directly opened his Sharingan and began to practice the third form of Susanoo. A month passed in a flash, and when Hinata projected the message from Doom, Rogue left Konoha Hidden Village and returned to Earth. After returning to Konoha's headquarters, he didn't stay at the headquarters for too long. He opened the portal to Doom's castle and came to the meeting room where he met with Doom last time. "You're a little different." Although Doom didn't know what Rogue had done in the past month, he could clearly feel the obvious change in Rogue's aura. "I went to make some preparations to face Mephisto." Rogue gave a simple answer. He didn't need to explain his training to Doom. Doom was just his client, and the relationship between them wasn't good enough to reveal details to each other. "This is my latest plan, you can take a look at it first. The way to go to hell is also on it, but I believe you have your own way to go there." After saying that, Doom pointed to the document that had been placed in front of Rogue for a long time. Rogue opened the document and looked at the plan that Doom came up with after detailed research. The theme of the plan was similar to what he said before. He went to hell with Doom to face Mephisto, and then Doom sacrificed him to Mephisto for Cynthia. With Doom's understanding of his mother, Cynthia, he knew that Cynthia would definitely refuse him to help her regain her freedom in this way. Although when Cynthia died, Doom was still very young. But he knew that his mother, Cynthia, was a gentle angel. As long as Cynthia refused the freedom that Doom sacrificed Rogue for, then Cynthia's soul would be redeemed and fly to heaven, thus escaping from Mephisto's clutches. When the soul is redeemed, it can fly to heaven. This is the passive setting of heaven. As long as a soul does this, heaven will take the initiative to receive this soul, regardless of whether the soul is in hell or not. This is a trick to use heaven to defeat hell, but this approach is feasible. It's like only magic can defeat magic. If you want to defeat hell, you can only use the power of heaven. In the past month, Doom had repeatedly calculated the possibilities, and even specifically confirmed the power of heaven. Doom did not doubt the existence of heaven because there was a fragment of the true cross on his armor. However, he still needed to confirm whether the power of heaven's rules could really break Mephisto's imprisonment of Cynthia's soul. After a month of repeated calculations, he confirmed the feasibility of the plan and came up with the final implementation plan. "There's no problem with following this plan, but there's one thing I need to confirm first. Are you sure that your device can allow us to safely travel to and from hell? I don't want to go to hell and not be able to come back, and I don't want any accidents to happen on the way to hell." Rogue did not doubt that Doom could invent a device to go to hell. In fact, this kind of thing had happened once when Doom was still studying in the United States. However, that time, he had sent his soul to hell, not his body. Doom's handsome face was disfigured because of that experiment. Rogue did not want his face, which was even more handsome than Minato's, to become like Doom. "There's absolutely no problem. I can swear on the soul of my mother, Cynthia." Of course, Doom knew what Rogue was worried about. On the surface, he was worried about whether the teleportation device he had discovered was safe or not. However, in reality, he was worried about whether he would leave him alone in hell after Cynthia's soul flew to heaven. "All right. Then when do we set off?" Under normal circumstances, if a mage wanted to make an oath credible, they would have to swear to a more powerful existence, such as a god. However, Doom did not do so. Instead, he swore on Cynthia's soul. From a magical point of view, this oath did not have a strong binding power. However, from Doom's perspective, this was the strongest guarantee he could make. In terms of filial piety to his mother, Doom was definitely a 100% filial son. Now, although going to hell a day earlier or a day later would not make much of a difference, Doom hoped to restore his mother's freedom as soon as possible, even if it was just a minute or a second earlier. Alright. Under Doom's lead, Rog came to the dungeon at the bottom of the castle. The area of the dungeon was larger than Rog had imagined, and the environment was completely different from the dark dungeons in his memory. If he did not know that this was the place where Doom made a bet with Mephisto every year, he would even think that this was a secret research lab buried deep underground. Most of the items in the dungeon had been removed. In the dungeon, which was the size of a football field, there was only a circular door made of metal and those densely packed lines that covered the entire ground like a spider web. This portal will close after it opens, and reopen after 10 seconds. I've calculated the flow of time between hell and earth. This time is enough for us to finish everything in hell. If we can't finish it, we'll probably be dead in hell already. The last time Rog went to hell with Ghost Rider Johnny, he didn't pay special attention to the flow of time between the hell dimension and earth. They hadn't stayed in hell for long, so they didn't feel anything when they returned to earth. But Doom was different. Apart from being a mage, he was also a scientist who was very sensitive to data. The details that Rog and Ghost Rider Johnny hadn't noticed were important for him to figure out. As long as you're sure there's no problem. We're not in a hurry anyway. Rog stood a meter behind Doom and watched him operate this hell portal that was a combination of technology and magic. Ghost Rider's Hellfire portal was more convenient. He could just drive the ghost motorcycle in, and there was no need to prepare so many things. Although that was what he thought, Rog knew that Ghost Rider's ability to freely travel to hell wasn't something that could be found everywhere. In the field of magic, this kind of teleportation had a special term, dimensional teleportation. Chapter 466. Dimensional teleportation was different from ordinary teleportation. It was a teleportation that directly crossed worlds. Although dimensional teleportation did not necessarily require more energy than ordinary teleportation, it was definitely several levels more difficult than ordinary teleportation. In order to perform dimensional teleportation, the first problem to deal with was how to break the world wall between the two worlds. The world wall was an invisible and untouchable existence. Not to mention breaking it, even sensing it was not an easy task. Rog stood quietly behind Doom and watched him operate the teleportation device that he could not understand at all. After Doom set all the data, this extraordinary-looking teleportation portal emitted a lava-like red light. As the red light lit up, a glass-like red light curtain appeared in the middle of the teleportation portal. On the other side of the light curtain was a dry yellow desert. Let's go. After activating the teleportation portal, Doom did not look back. He walked straight into the portal and arrived at Hell, which was completely different from Earth. After Doom entered the portal, Rog activated the infinite mode that he had developed and followed him in. Hell was not a place where the living should come. Everything here did not welcome the living, such as the poisonous air and the will of Hell. When Rog also entered Hell, the red teleportation portal behind him immediately closed and disappeared as if it had never appeared. Just like how Rog had added infinite mode to himself, Doom had also added a magic effect that Rog could not understand, giving him the right to move freely in Hell. After arriving at this Hell that was like a death planet, Rog and Doom did not speak, and quietly adjusted their state. They were not rookies who had gone to Hell for the first time, so they both knew that they did not need to look for Mephistos at all. As they had expected, not long after they arrived in Hell, they saw their old friend, the Lord of Hell, Mephistos. At this moment, Mephistos did not reveal his demon true body, but maintained the demeanor of an old British noble that Rog had seen before. He was wearing a slim black classical suit, meticulously groomed silver-white hair, and a black cane inlaid with a silver skull. Looking at Mephistos, who looked like a British aristocrat, Doom frowned slightly. He had fought Mephisto many times, but he had never seen Mephisto in a human form. In the past, Mephistos had shown him the typical image of a demon with red skin, curved horns, and bat wings. I didn't expect that we would meet in hell so soon. I thought that you would only appear at the last moment. Although 10 years is only equivalent to sleeping for a demon, I'm still gratified to be able to see you so soon. Mephistos glanced at Doom, then turned his gaze to Rog. To him, Rog and Doom were toys that could make him happy. The only difference was that Rog's toy was slightly more expensive, while Doom's was slightly more ordinary. Of course, this did not mean that Doom was much weaker than Rog. It was just that according to Mephistos' standards, Rog's soul was an extremely rare limited edition, or even the only one that had gone out of print. I said that I would definitely fulfill my promise. Don't underestimate a ninja's promise. Although this was hell, Mephistos' home ground, Rog's mind was as calm as ever. Mephistos was indeed very powerful, but it wasn't as if he couldn't fight back at all. Furthermore, he had Professor Doom by his side. Good. Very good. Mephistos said with great relief as he looked at Rog with even more admiration. He originally thought that Rog planned to continue cultivating for 10 years before coming to meet him in hell. However, Rog's actions once again exceeded his expectations. Mephistos liked people who were unpredictable. This would make him feel the small surprises in life. When everything was under control, life would become especially boring. Why did Mephistos, a mighty lord of hell, always like to tempt ignorant ordinary people on earth? It was because he wanted his life to not be so boring. Seeing those souls struggle in pain and regret in his hands would give him a rare sense of satisfaction. Mephistos, let's start this year's bet. Doom did not wait for Rog and Mephistos to continue talking and directly said to Mephistos. This year's bet? No problem. I don't mind having a small appetizer before I want to eat the delicacies. As soon as he finished speaking, Mephistos' aura became completely different. If the previous Mephistos more or less gave off a friendly and amiable feeling, then the current him was like a high and mighty king who ruled over all things. In fact, in hell, Mephistos was indeed a high and mighty king. However, the Rog and Doom in front of him now were not the demons of hell who would tremble when they saw him and choose to submit from the bottom of their hearts. Mephistos displayed his aura as a lord of hell, but he did not change his human appearance. He still maintained the appearance of an old British noble. Come, let me see what kind of abilities you have after joining forces. Whether it was Rog or Doom, Mephistos was no stranger to them. Mephistos didn't know their strength 100%, but he knew it very well. As soon as Mephistos finished speaking, a strong holy aura erupted from Doom's body, making him look like an angel who had descended from heaven. Doom had many spells, but what he was using now was not the magic he had mastered, but the ability of the fragment of the true cross on his armor. Golden light instantly enveloped Doom's entire body, making him look extremely holy. Then, a laser-like holy beam of light descended from the sky and arrived in front of Mephistos like lightning. Although Mephistos was not an undead creature, the holy energy provided by the fragment of the true cross could still restrain his power of hell to a certain extent. Heaven was the nemesis of hell. The holy energy of heaven was also one of the energies that could restrain the power of hell the most. Doom had fought with Mephistos more than 10 times. Of course, he would not overlook this. When Doom summoned the holy beam of light to attack Mephistos, Rog did not hesitate and directly summoned the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword. The moment the silver-white Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword appeared in his right hand out of thin air, his figure also disappeared. Byakugan, open. Lightning release chakra mode. Unlimited mode could only give Rog the ability to move safely in all kinds of environments. It was not a battle-type ninjutsu. So the moment he attacked Mephistos, Rog gave himself the first layer of battle-specific buffs. The moment Rog disappeared like lightning, the holy beam of light summoned by Doom also hit Mephistos, completely devouring the thin and weak Mephistos. To be precise, it devoured the afterimage left behind by Mephistos. Facing the attack of the holy beam of light, Mephistos did not use any magic or energy moves. He dodged the holy beam of light with just his physical strength and left behind an afterimage. As a lord of hell, Mephistos' physical strength could not be weak. He rarely used melee combat, not because he didn't know how, but because there was no need. Rog and Doom were not surprised that Mephistos could easily dodge the attack of the holy beam of light. If Mephistos could not even dodge such an attack, he would not be qualified to be a lord of hell. Mephistos, who had dodged the holy beam of light, appeared more than 10 meters behind him again. At the same time, Rog, who had entered lightning release chakra mode, also appeared in front of him. Lightning release, Thousand Birds Blade. In just an instant, the silver-white Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword was wrapped with light blue lightning as it stabbed directly at Mephistos' chest. Although Mephistos was a lord of hell, he also had a fatal weakness like the other demons of hell, his heart core. Through the Byakugan, Rog saw the fist-sized heart core in Mephistos' chest that looked like a solidified red sun. Clang! Unlike the previous battle, Mephistos did not use an energy barrier to block Rog's attack this time. Instead, he raised the black scepter in his hand. The black scepter that looked like it was made of ordinary wood blocked the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword with great precision, and the crisp sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard. Before Rog could retract his Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword, Mephistos held the tip of the scepter in his hand and turned it into a sharp sword, stabbing at Rog repeatedly. Clang, 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 clang. At this moment, Mephistos displayed exquisite swordsmanship. Just with one stab after another, he forced Rog to retreat continuously. As expected of a lord of hell, he had a way. Rog had no intention of competing with Mephistos in swordsmanship, so he immediately retreated. However, the moment he pulled away, Mephistos stuck close to him like a shadow. Before the Earthlings even had civilization, the demons were already masters of close combat. Playing with swords in front of me, aren't you looking down on the demons of hell too much? The swordsmanship that Mephistos displayed now was not inferior to that of the goddess of death, Hela. Although his swordsmanship was only fast, accurate, and ruthless, in his hands, even the simplest of moves could turn into a storm of death that could take away one's life. Holy Halo! Holy Oath! Just as Rog was being forced back by Mephistos, Dum cast 2 more holy spells in the distance. Rog, who was enveloped in lightning release chakra, suddenly shone with a golden light that was like the sun. At the same time, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword in his hand was wrapped in holy flames that contained holy energy. Holy Halo gave Rog the holy energy to resist the power of hell, increasing his strength and speed for a short period of time. Holy Oath gave the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword in his hand the ability to deal holy damage. Professor of Destruction Dum became a reliable healer, giving Rog 2 holy buffs. Chapter 467. Reality proved that although Professor Doom did not have a good reputation in the outside world, he would be a very good team member when working together. The timing of the 2 holy spells, Holy Halo and Holy Oath, could be said to be perfect. If not for the fact that this was Doom's first time fighting together, Rog would have suspected that he had specially trained with Doom in this kind of tactic. The sudden burst of holy energy from Rog's body instantly disrupted Mephistos' attack rhythm, giving him an almost negligible amount of time to catch his breath. To ordinary people, Mephistos' short delay of a few tenths of a second wasn't an opportunity at all. However, to people like Rog or Hela who were extremely proficient in close-range combat, this delay was enough to turn the tide of the battle. Mephistos' black cane brushed past Rog's face, almost leaving a scar on his handsome face. Rog did not waste the opportunity that Doom had created. The Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword wrapped in light blue lightning and golden holy flame stabbed out at a speed that exceeded the limits of what the naked eye could see. This time, Rog did not stab at Mephistos' heart core in his chest. Instead, he stabbed at his right eye. Even if Mephisto was a lord of hell, as long as he was stabbed by this sword, he would definitely have a temporary loss of vision. This had nothing to do with whether Mephisto was a lord of hell or not. It was purely determined by his form. If Rog did not have Holy Halo and Holy Oath, Mephisto would not care about this sword at all. Although the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword was fast, he could completely create an energy barrier before it stabbed him and block Rog's sword. However, Mephisto did not dare to do so now. He could ignore Rog's chakra, but he did not dare to underestimate the holy energy of the true cross fragment. Retreat! Retreat quickly! Mephisto, who had just mocked Rog for overestimating himself and daring to use swordsmanship in front of him, was now forced back by Rog's sword. Although Log didn't say anything harsh to Mephisto, he proved it to Mephisto with his actions. Don't act tough just because you're older. There were many examples of people who looked down on the Earth civilization and were defeated by the Earthlings in the end. Mephistos chose to retreat, but Rog wouldn't let him off so easily. A few seconds ago, Mephisto was still chasing after Rog. But now, the situation was reversed. Dang 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 dang. Previously, Mephisto had used Rog as a practice target. Now, it was Rog's turn to return the favor. Just like Mephisto's, who only pursued speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness with his sword, Rog's attack also followed these 3 points. Swords were lethal weapons, and swordsmanship was the art of killing. Note 1, the art of killing did not need to be fancy. Just as Rog was about to leave the mark of an earthling on Mephisto's body in one go, the holy energy in his body disappeared. The duration of the Holy Halo and the Holy Oath had ended. The sudden disappearance of the buff inevitably made his movements a little incoherent. The experienced Mephisto naturally wouldn't miss such an opportunity. However, just as he was about to counterattack, Rog opened his mouth silently. "Old man, you've been tricked." With Mephisto's ability, reading lips wasn't a problem at all. But before he could react, a holy light that seemed to have descended from heaven completely enveloped the two of them. Holy purification. It was true that Rog and Doom had never worked together before, but they were both existences with rich combat experience. Even if they hadn't rehearsed or worked together before, as long as they had seen the same battle plan, they would be able to cooperate tacitly. Holy Halo, Holy Oath, Holy Purification, these holy spells were all in the plan that Doom had shown Rog. In order to regain the freedom of Cynthia's soul, Doom generously revealed the spells he had mastered to Rog. Although the spells recorded in the plan couldn't be all of Doom's spells. However, as long as he knew the effects of these spells, Rog would be able to determine which spell Doom would cast at which time. This had nothing to do with whether the two of them were familiar with each other or not. It was purely because they had the same level of combat thinking. Simply put, this was like two kings being matched against the same passerby. They had indeed never worked together before, but under the premise of knowing what abilities the other party had, they could easily cooperate exquisitely. In a one-on-one situation, they were indeed no match for Mephisto. Although the humans on Earth were far inferior to the demons in Hell, humans had an advantage that demons could never have. Humans were creatures that would help and support each other. A single person's strength might be very insignificant, but when one human after another was added together, it was enough to change the world. Man could conquer nature. Because humans were weak, they learned to work together. Because humans were weak, they learned to use the laws of nature and borrow the power of the world itself. Because humans were weak, they learned to be humble and learn, and explore the truth of the world bit by bit. So, never, ever underestimate humans. The holy light that was like the descent of heaven dispelled the power of hell within a few hundred meters. This hellish place filled with destruction and chaos showed a warmth and light that had never appeared before. When the holy light dissipated, Rog and Mephisto, who were at the center of the holy purification, disappeared. The power of holy purification was very strong, enough to deal a fatal blow to the undead and demons. But it also depended on who the opponent was. As a lord of hell, the holy purification that Doom used the true cross fragment to cast could indeed make him suffer a small loss, but it was far from enough to seriously injure him. However, Rog and Doom didn't expect the holy purification to completely deal with the Lord of Hell. Being able to make Mephisto suffer a small loss was already a very good result. The defense towers had to be pushed down one by one, and the troops had to be pushed down in waves. In order to destroy the enemy's crystal, they had to build up their own advantage bit by bit. What Rog and Doom were doing now was to increase their advantage bit by bit. This advantage might not be obvious now, but as long as they continued to accumulate, they would be able to destroy this crystal named Mephisto sooner or later. After the holy purification, Rog's figure appeared 2 to 3 meters in front of Doom, while Mephisto's figure appeared more than 100 meters away. After being hit by the holy purification on the spot, even Mephisto was left with many marks. His classic black suit had obvious holes in it, and his meticulous silver hair had also become messy. Good. Very good. Both of you are very good. Although Mephisto's voice wasn't loud, Rog and Doom could clearly hear the anger in his voice. Before they could say anything, Mephisto tore off his suit, revealing his strong muscles that didn't match his image of an old man. Under Rog and Doom's gaze, Mephisto's skin turned dark red, and the human appearance that he maintained also changed. 2 huge curved horns grew out of his forehead, his human hands turned into monster-like claws, and a pair of huge red bat wings surged out of his back. In less than a second or two, Mephisto turned into the classic demon image in the legends. Although this red demon image looked like Mephisto's true demon body, Rog knew that this wasn't Mephisto's true appearance. Mephisto's true appearance was unknown, and all the appearances he displayed were only changes he made according to his needs. Note 2, however, from the way Mephisto transformed from a human into a demon, he should be angry. Otherwise, he could have continued to maintain his human appearance and the mentality that this was just a small game. After Mephisto transformed into a demon, Rog threw the Kusanagi sword back into the psychic scroll and deactivated the lightning escape chakra mode. Since Mephisto was starting to get angry, he naturally had to give himself a stronger buff. 8 inner hidden gates, 6th gate, gate of view, open. Before the battle with Ronin on planet Saga, Rog had already grasped the 6th gate, gate of view. It was just that Ronin's strength was too weak. He couldn't even survive the 5th gate, gate of stop, causing the 6th gate, gate of view, to lose the opportunity to appear. Although Mephisto didn't know what kind of existence the 8 inner hidden gates were, he could clearly sense Rog's greatly increased chakra and physical strength. Is he planning to continue fighting me in close combat? Mephisto's had changed his human form to that of a demon, with the intention of continuing to fight Rog in close combat. But what he didn't expect was that after seeing his demon appearance, Rog actually used a move that greatly increased his physical strength. Ha. Ha ha ha. Interesting. Interesting. Looking at Rog, who was emitting a green glow, Mephisto suddenly laughed. Under normal circumstances, people would choose to attack their opponent's weakness with their strengths. This was also the most suitable tactic in a battle. But at this moment, Rog was doing the opposite. Mephisto transformed into a demon that was better at close combat, and he activated the 8 inner hidden gates that could greatly increase his close combat ability. Don't you want to fight in close combat? I'll give you the chance. Rog's tit-for-tat and unyielding approach perfectly matched Mephisto's preferences. Looking at Rog, Mephisto thought of his disappointing descendants. Why don't my descendants have such a personality? They only know how to scheme against each other all day and play small tricks that can't be shown in public. They're simply embarrassing me, Mephisto. If he had a descendant with Rog's personality, why would he stay in hell and work so hard at his age? Be my son. Just as Rog and Doom were waiting for Mephisto's revenge attack, Mephisto suddenly said something that confused them. Chapter 468. Was this guy crazy? Or did he go to the wrong set? Mephisto's words made Rog and Doom look puzzled. However, after hearing this sentence, the two of them thought of completely different things. Doom had interacted with Mephisto many times, but he had never seen Mephisto like this. The current Mephisto didn't have the attitude of a lord of hell at all. Instead, he looked like an old human man anxiously looking for an heir. If he wasn't very sure that Rog was a native of Earth and a disciple of the Ancient One, Doom would have suspected that Rog really had some unspeakable relationship with Mephisto. Although Rog didn't think as much as Doom, Mephisto's words reminded him of a great man who claimed to be a remnant of the old era. I am a remnant of the old era, and the new era doesn't have a ship to carry me. Note 1, until today, Rog could still clearly remember how excited he was when he heard this sentence. A man's heroic life should come to an end in such a spectacular way. Therefore, when he heard Mephisto's words, he couldn't help but be distracted, and his thoughts involuntarily flew to the sea that carried the dreams of countless people. You should leave this kind of qualification to others. I can't afford it. Rog directly rejected Mephisto's suggestion. Even if his brain had been fried by the chakra of the 8 gates, there was no way he would agree to Mephisto's suggestion. Wasn't it good to be a human? It's okay, I'll make you slowly agree. As long as you live in hell for a while, you'll find that hell isn't as bad as you think. Mephisto didn't care about Rog's rejection. He would have been surprised if Rog had agreed immediately. Moreover, Rog's rejection made Mephisto admire him even more. Perhaps it was his imagination, but Rog felt that there was something wrong with the way Mephisto looked at him. He remembered that he had seen this kind of gaze from a certain group of people with special sexual orientations. After shaking his head to dispel these strange thoughts, Rog took a deep breath and took the initiative to attack Mephisto's in the distance. He had to complete the mission as soon as possible, then leave hell and stay away from that old pervert. Rog, whose body was emitting green light, disappeared again. In the next second, he arrived in front of Mephisto, who had become more than 2 meters tall. Shadow Dance Leaf. Rog, who appeared in front of Mephisto in a flash, raised his right leg, and kicked Mephisto's chin. Rog, who had opened the 6th gate of view, erupted with a speed that shocked even Mephisto. However, just as his right foot was about to land on Mephisto's chin, the giant bat wings on Mephisto's back flapped gently, and he flew out of Lin Li's attack range. Although Mephisto had never seen the 8 inner hidden gates before, he knew one thing very well, and that was that the 8 inner hidden gates was definitely not simple. Not to mention the attack power of the 8 inner hidden gates, just the fact that it could increase Rog's chakra was enough to make Mephisto extremely vigilant. The last time they fought, Mephisto discovered that Rog's body had energy that far exceeded that of an earthling. At this moment, Rog's chakra, which was already very large, became even more astonishing under the amplification of the 8 inner hidden gates. However, this was normal. After all, opening the 8 inner hidden gates was equivalent to burning one's life force. Whether it was burning one's life force, soul, or anything else, it could increase the caster's strength by a terrifying amount. There were many such methods in the human world, and there were also many in hell. Mephisto's bat wings flapped gently, and he flew dozens of meters into the air. He looked down at Rog, who was on the ground. However, in the next second, Rog disappeared from the ground again. Shadow Dancing Leaf was Lotus Flower's starting move. It was to kick the enemy into the air, so he deliberately targeted the enemy's chin. Although Log's Shadow Dancing Leaf didn't hit Mephisto, Mephisto flew up on its own and completed the effect he wanted to cast on it. Inner Lotus. Just as Mephisto was about to sense Rog's whereabouts, Rog's voice sounded behind him. After Shadow Dancing Leaf, he could follow up with Outer Lotus and Inner Lotus. Rog had originally planned to use Outer Lotus to test the power of Mephisto's demon form. However, after Mephisto said, "Be my son," and revealed a look that gave him goosebumps, he decisively gave up on Outer Lotus. Outer Lotus needed to tie Mephisto up tightly with bandages or something else and then spin him into the ground. At this moment, Rog didn't want to have such intimate contact with Mephisto. Therefore, Inner Lotus, who didn't need to be hugged by the opponent, became a more suitable choice. The moment the voice sounded, Rog's right fist hit Mephisto's back, sending him flying to the ground. However, the moment Mephisto was sent flying, Rog, who was originally behind Mephisto, arrived in front of him and kicked him in the chest with his right foot. Thus, Mephisto, who was originally flying toward the ground, flew backward into the sky. Mephisto's combat skills and reaction speed were extremely outstanding, but unfortunately, he had encountered Rog, who had cheated. After hitting Mephisto twice in a row, Rog arrived beside Mephisto again. Then, it was another heavy punch. Mephisto, a mighty lord of hell, was sent flying by Rog like a volleyball. Bang, 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 muffled sounds of strikes rang out continuously, as if a battle song that belonged to Log was being played. Although Dum really wanted to help Rog add a few holy attribute enhancement spells, he helplessly discovered that he couldn't keep up with Rog's speed at all. Rog's Inner Lotus at this moment proved what it meant to be a high-speed attack that the enemy couldn't even touch. Even an existence like the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, couldn't stop Rog's high-speed attacks, and could only passively choose to take the beating. Although Mephisto looked a little beaten up now, in fact, the damage that Inner Lotus had done to him was more in terms of image than physical body. This was the first time in Mephisto's long life that he was being hit like a volleyball. After punching and kicking Mephisto dozens of times in the air at a speed that was beyond what the naked eye could capture, Rog finally made the final blow to end Inner Lotus. Boom! Mephisto, who had been hit in the chest by Rog's right fist, crashed into the ground like a meteor, creating a huge crater that was more than 10 meters wide. The thick ground outside the crater also cracked like a spider web from Mephisto's impact, spreading dozens of meters around the crater. After using Inner Lotus ultimate skill, Rog also stopped flying in the air, and slowly landed on the ground. When Rog landed on the ground, Dum finally had the chance to throw out the holy spell that he had prepared long ago. Light Armor. An armor completely made of golden light appeared on Rog's body, making him look like a heavenly soldier from heaven. At the same time, the physical strength that he had just used to cast Inner Lotus quickly recovered, and all the fatigue and discomfort in his body were instantly dispelled. More importantly, the light armor added the holy attribute to his attacks that was most effective against hell demons. As the light armor appeared, Mephisto, who had been beaten up by Inner Lotus, also flew out of the crater. Inner Lotus, that's a pretty good move. But it's a pity that your attack just now didn't have any holy attribute. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic Mephisto moved his body in front of Rog and Dum. With a series of crackling sounds, Mephisto's demonic form returned to its original state, and the wounds from Inner Lotus attack completely disappeared. It's okay, as long as I can beat you up. Rog didn't expect Inner Lotus to seriously injure Mephisto. Li Lianhua was just a cover. His real goal had been achieved long before Li Lianhua ended. Is that so? Then I'll show you the battle stance of a demon. Mephisto, who was flying in the air, disappeared instantly, and appeared in front of Rog in a flash. Seeing Mephisto suddenly appear, Rog's expression didn't change, and he didn't even move. Just as Mephisto's sharp and huge right claw was about to grab him, Rog finally moved. Flying Thor. Mephisto's right claw slashed across where Rog had been standing, and Rog appeared behind Mephisto at the same time. Holy Super Jade Rasengan. Before Mephisto could react, a Super Jade Rasengan wrapped in holy power, like the sun, struck him hard on the back. Boom! The Super Jade Rasengan that contained holy attributes exploded, and Mephisto, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. Flying Thor. This was Rog's real goal in using Inner Lotus to attack Mephisto. His goal had never been to use Inner Lotus to seriously injure Mephisto, but to use Inner Lotus attack to conceal the existence of the Flying Thor. It turned out that Mephisto had indeed been deceived by Inner Lotus attack. He didn't notice the existence of the flying Thor at all. With Mephisto's ability, as long as he discovered the existence of the flying Thor, it wouldn't be difficult for him to disperse the Thor. But he didn't do that at all. He only recovered from the injuries caused by Inner Lotus attack, and completely ignored the seemingly inconspicuous but even more fatal flying Thor. Mephisto was considered experienced and knowledgeable, but the flying Thor that Rog used just now was completely beyond his imagination. He didn't even notice how Rog had appeared behind him. Chapter 469. The power of the Okodama Rasengan wasn't weak to begin with. Coupled with the holy power that countered demons, Rog's holy Okodama Rasengan dealt the highest damage since the start of the battle. Mephisto's flew backward for more than 100 meters before finally stopping. He used his body to draw a trench dozens of meters long on the ground. Looking at Mephisto's messy back and the fact that he was missing a bat wing, Rog was slightly surprised. He didn't expect the holy Okodama Rasengan that he suddenly came up with to be so powerful. The power of the holy power was far more effective against demons than he had imagined. Being sent flying by Rog again, and being sent flying by the Okodama Rasengan that contained holy power, made Mephisto's, who was already a little impatient, completely change his expression. He did admire Rog, but he couldn't tolerate Rog provoking him again and again. Although the injury on Mephisto's back was serious, it wasn't serious enough to seriously injure him. A visible black energy suddenly surged out of Mephisto's body. With the appearance of the black energy, the injury on his back quickly healed. The bat wing that had fallen to an unknown place had also grown back. Rapid regeneration. It only took a second or two for Mephisto's to recover completely, as if nothing had happened. The regenerative ability of demons was astonishing to begin with, not to mention that Mephisto's wasn't an ordinary demon. The regenerative ability of a Lord of Hell wasn't something that trash demons could compare to. When the injury on his back was completely healed, Mephisto's slowly turned around and looked at Rog in the distance with a solemn expression. Although he really wanted Rog to be his son, his most outstanding and powerful descendant. But he also knew that Rog wasn't the kind of existence to be obedient. In the world of demons, there was a very simple way to make your subordinates and descendants obedient, and that was to use your fists to tell the other party who was the boss. The fist was the truth. This was the simple, efficient, and primitive values of Hell's demons. Although Rog wasn't a demon from Hell, Mephisto's didn't mind letting him understand in advance what a filial son in Hell was. After healing his injuries again, Mephisto's didn't immediately attack Rog. Instead, he silently checked his body. Although it was his first time seeing the flying Thor, he immediately realized something. When Rog suddenly appeared behind him, he sensed a spatial fluctuation that was so weak that it was almost negligible. To others, this weak spatial fluctuation was as if it didn't exist. But to Mephisto's, although it was weak, it wasn't enough to completely hide from his senses. Just as Mephisto's tried to check his body, Mephisto's, the holy armor, attacked Mephisto's attack. It hadn't been easy for Log to secretly leave a few flying lightning god spells on Mephisto's body. There was no way he was going to let Mephisto dispel them. The flying Thor. With a thought, Rog appeared in front of Mephisto again, and punched at Mephisto with both fists at the same time. Morning Peacock. This was a powerful move that could only be used after opening the sixth gate, the Gate of View. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of fist shadows appeared in front of Mephisto's. Rog wasn't the thousand-hand Guanyin. Of course, he didn't have 1,000 fists. These countless fist shadows that filled the sky were purely visual afterimages caused by the speed of his punches being too fast. He infused the super speed and super attack power of the sixth gate, the Gate of View, into his fists and used countless fists to hit the enemy with a super powerful physical technique. This was Morning Peacock. And it was different from the Morning Peacock used under normal circumstances. Rog's Morning Peacock not only produced flames because of its speed, but it also had the holy power of the holy armor, turning these orange-red flames into golden holy flames. Mephisto's was indeed very strong, but in front of Rog's Morning Peacock, he could only passively defend. It wasn't that he didn't want to retreat, but that Rog didn't give him any chance to retreat at all. Morning Peacock was a rapid, continuous attack that didn't give the enemy any time to breathe. If it was so easy to dodge Morning Peacock's attack, it wouldn't be qualified to be a move that could only be used after opening the sixth gate, the Gate of View. The greater the price paid, the more power one would gain. Any move or method that could increase the strength of the caster followed this simple and unadorned principle. Mephisto's, who had already tasted the power of the lotus flower and the sacred super Kodama Rasengan with his body, didn't hesitate. He immediately mobilized the seemingly endless magic power in his body and instantly constructed several layers of energy barriers in front of him. Layer after layer of blood-red or dark energy barriers appeared in front of Mephisto's, forming a line of defense between him and Rog. As soon as Mephisto's energy barriers appeared, the golden flames scattered from Rog's fists occupied his entire vision, turning the sky in front of him golden. It was as bright as the sunrise, as dazzling as the tail feathers of a peacock. Morning Peacock. It lived up to its name. The golden holy flames, along with Rog's fists, kept hitting Mephisto's energy barriers. Bang! 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 Under Morning Peacock's attack, the energy barriers with astonishing defensive power only lasted for a short 1 or 2 seconds before they were completely shattered. Rog's fists and the remaining holy flames poured down on Mephisto's body like bullets from a Gatling gun. This violent attack, with its visual effects, lasted for a full 5 seconds before it ended. Rog's last punch landed heavily on Mephisto's demon head, directly shattering part of it. After Rog ended Morning Peacock, Doom finally had time to size up Mephisto's appearance from afar. Mephisto's body, which had just recovered, was once again riddled with injuries. Being hit by the sacred super Kodama Rasengan only left Mephisto's back in a mess and destroyed one of his bat wings. After being attacked by Morning Peacock, Mephisto's not only lost all of his bat wings, but even the curved horn on his head was completely broken. What was even more shocking was that there were visible holes of different sizes on Mephisto's body. This time, Mephisto's wasn't sent flying, but stopped less than 5 meters away from Rog. "Now, do you still think you can subdue me?" Rog said as he walked toward the wounded Mephisto's, his right hand once again condensing the Rasengan containing holy power. Chapter 470. Just as Rog condensed the sacred Rasengan and walked towards Mephisto, Dr. Doom, who had been watching the battle from behind for a long time, made his move again. Doom raised his empty right hand, as if holding an invisible whip, and threw it directly in Rog's direction. The moment Doom's right hand fell, a chain completely condensed from golden light instantly appeared and struck Rog like lightning. Chains of God. The chains of God condensed from golden light instantly crossed a distance of hundreds of meters and appeared behind Rog in a flash. Then, it tied him up firmly. Doom directly attacked Rog. Although the chains of God, which contained the divine power of heaven, were only 2 or 3 centimeters thick, the divine power on the chain displayed an extremely terrifying binding ability. The appearance of the chains of God stopped Rog from moving forward and bound him in place. Before Rog could turn around, Doom made his move again. Holy Sealing Sword. Doom's empty left hand was raised high, and as if he was swinging a sword, he swung it down from top to bottom. With the swing of Doom's left hand, 6 two-handed giant swords condensed from divine power fell from the sky like meteors and landed in front of Rog, piercing through his body. These 6 holy sealing swords stabbed into Rog's body from 6 different angles. Not only did they nail him in place, but they also sealed the flow of his chakra in an overbearing manner. In the blink of an eye, the green light shining on Rog's body disappeared, and the Hashiman Tonku was forcibly closed. Even the sacred Rasengan condensed in his right hand burst silently like a bubble. Was this an internal strife? Mephisto, who was riddled with scars, did not understand what was going on for a while. After being beaten up by Rog's morning peacock, which contained divine power, he planned to completely give up on close combat with Rog. However, before he could change his form again, he saw the scene of internal strife. "Mephisto, let's make a deal." Holding the chain of gods in his right hand, Dermu flew to a dozen meters behind Rog and spoke to Mephisto condescendingly. "Dumb, what do you mean by this?" Before Mephisto could say anything, Rog questioned Doom angrily. "That's what I mean now." Dumb did not mind Rog's dissatisfaction, and gently tugged at the chains of God in his hand. The second Doom pulled on the chains of God. The chains on Rog's body tightened around him like a python trying to strangle its prey. "Dumb, you better pray that I never return to Earth. Otherwise, I'll definitely wipe out your Ladovinia." Although Rog's voice was not loud, Doom and Mephisto could clearly feel the murderous intent that he was emitting. "I never pray." As soon as he said that, the chains of God wrapped around Rog's body extended to his head and completely tied him up like a bandage wrapped around a mummy. Although Mephisto did not know what Dumb was planning, he could tell that Dumb and Rog, who were originally in the same team, had completely fallen out. Or rather, Dumb had unilaterally chosen to betray his teammates. Mephisto first healed the holes and wounds on his body, then looked up at Dumb, who was floating in the air. The mysterious energy in Rog's body had really been sealed. Dumu was being serious. As a demon from hell who had integrated cunningness into his instincts, Mephisto did not let the internal strife in front of him go to his head. He used his own method to sense Rog's current state in detail. The chains of God bound Rog's body, and the holy light sealing sword sealed the energy in his body. "What do you want?" Mephisto looked up at Dumb and asked calmly. "My mother's soul." Just as Mephisto had expected, Dumb gave the answer he already knew. "Using Log to exchange for your mother's soul, that's a pretty good deal." As he spoke, Mephisto raised his right hand and summoned an irregular hexagonal prism. In this crystal-like prism, there was a typical image of a woman from Earth. Cynthia's soul. The image in the prism that was like a holographic projection was the soul of Dumb's mother, Cynthia. "It's a good deal, but why should I believe you?" Mephisto said with a smile. At the same time, orange-red hellfire burned in the prism. "Ah!" The moment the hellfire burned, Cynthia in the prism let out a painful howl. Hearing Cynthia's miserable howl, veins appeared on Dumb's right hand that was holding the chains of God. His body exuded a strong killing intent that was not on the same level as Rog's just now. "Mephisto! Don't go overboard." Dumb suppressed the anger in his heart and said word by word. "Overboard? I don't think so." Although he said that, Mephisto still ended the hellfire and let Cynthia escape her torture for the time being. Do you know that souls burned to death by hellfire are not only hated by hell and heaven, but they will also never have the chance to reincarnate. They will only become nutrients for hellfire and experience eternal pain in hellfire. Mephisto played with the prism that imprisoned Cynthia's soul and explained patiently. "I know. But I also know that existences killed by divine power will neither appear in hell nor ascend to heaven. Since you like gambling so much, do you dare to bet with me? Let's see if I feel more despair when my mother is killed, or if you feel more pain when you lose Rog's soul forever." As he spoke, the chains of God on Rog's body became brighter and brighter, gradually turning from golden to blazing white. "Watch carefully. Rog's soul that you want is about to disappear." As soon as he finished speaking, Dumb's right hand that was holding the other end of the chains of God began to exert force. "Wait," just as the chains of God were about to completely turn blazing white, Mephisto spoke. "Give me Rog, and I'll return your mother to you." Mephisto finally made the decision to make the deal. Cynthia's soul was just one of his many playthings. If not for the fact that Cynthia had a good son like Dumb, he would not be so concerned about Cynthia's soul. "Okay. Count down from 3, and we'll make the deal." Dum raised his right hand and pointed at the prism in Mephisto's hand with his left. No problem. Because they were in hell, Mephisto was not worried that Dum would play any tricks. Even if Dum had other intentions, he would not be able to leave hell with Xianxia. 3, 2, since Mephisto agreed to the deal, Dum did not hesitate and began to count down. Just as he was about to count down to 1 and throw the chains of God in his hand to Mephisto, Xianxia suddenly spoke in the prism. Don't do this." Cynthia's words directly interrupted the deal between Dum and Mephisto. "Shut up." Mephisto snorted unhappily, and made the hellfire appear in the prism again, intending to teach Xianxia a small lesson. Let her speak. However, before Mephisto could do anything, Dum clenched the chains of God in his hand tightly, and made them shine with a blazing white light. "Dum, I'm already very happy to see you grow up. Back then, I did something wrong, so I fell into the hands of the devil. I don't want you to walk the same path. If I can obtain my freedom in this way, I'd rather continue to be tortured by this devil for 1,000 years or 10,000 years. Dum, you've been a little angel who brings happiness and joy to others since you were young. I hope you can continue like this and bring happiness and joy to the people of Latvinia. You must become the guardian angel of Latvinia." Cynthia's voice wasn't loud, but Dum heard every word she said clearly. Looking at Dum, who was floating in the air and trying his best to control his trembling body, Xianxia stretched out her arms towards him, as if she wanted to hug her little angel. "Dum, Mom, I love you. I'll always love you." Xianxia smiled at Dum, a warm smile that did not fit in with hell appearing on her face. Then, Xianxia took the initiative to walk into the hellfire and was completely devoured by it. The hellfire that could bring extreme pain to the soul completely enveloped Xianxia's soul, but it did not bring any pain to Xianxia, unlike usual. At this moment, a faint golden light appeared on Xianxia's body. Xianxia gave up the freedom that Dum had obtained by betraying Rog. She gave up her life to teach Dum the last lesson a mother could teach her son. Xianxia's soul had been redeemed. Looking at the white light that suddenly appeared on Xianxia's body, Mephisto realized that something was wrong. This familiar white light reminded him of a certain existence that he hated the most. Before Mephisto could think of a result, a door formed by white light appeared in the sky above them. "This is the door to heaven." Mephisto immediately reacted. However, it was already too late. A warm light that was like the sun shot out from the door to heaven. It was like sunlight that pierced through dark clouds and shone on Mephisto's right hand. Sizzle, Mephisto's right hand that was illuminated by the holy light emitted a sound like roasting meat. Then, under his gaze, his right hand completely collapsed and dissipated. Along with his right hand, the prism that imprisoned Xianxia's soul and the hellfire that devoured Xianxia also dissipated. Under the white light, Xianxia's soul returned to its original size and slowly floated in front of Dum. She reached out her right hand and silently touched the metal mask on Dum's face. Just as Dum tried to hug Xianxia with both hands, Xianxia's soul completely disappeared. Xianxia had ascended to heaven. Chapter 471. The gates of heaven took away Xianxia's soul and ended her fate of being tortured by Mephisto. It also allowed Rog and Doom to complete their set battle goal. However, after Xianxia's soul ascended to heaven, the three people present didn't take any further action. Mephisto didn't do anything because he didn't expect that Xianxia's redemption would actually lead to the gates of heaven. This was hell, the farthest place from heaven. It was the dimension that rejected the power of heaven the most. Xianxia was just an ordinary person who knew a little about magic. She couldn't even be considered a magic apprentice. But it was such an ordinary person who completed her redemption in hell and even led the gates of heaven to hell. This was the first time in Mephisto's long life that such a phenomenon that didn't make sense at all. Mephisto was stunned because of the sudden appearance of the gates of heaven. As for Doom, who was floating in the air, he was so excited that he forgot what to do next. Xianxia's final farewell made Doom, who was known as Professor of Destruction, fall into deep memories. It made him recall the beautiful memories of his life with Cynthia. The only person who was more normal now was Rog, who was tied up like a mummy by the chains of God. Although the seal of the Holy Light Sealing Sword wasn't weak, the fact that it could completely seal the flow of chakra had a lot to do with his tacit cooperation. He and Doom didn't discuss the exact time of the deceit segment. The reason why he was able to prepare in advance before the effect of the Holy Light Sealing Sword took effect was purely because he received the action signal from Doom. The Chains of God was the action signal from Doom. From Mephisto's point of view, the Chains of God was just a means for Doom to restrain Rog and imprison him on the spot. But in reality, this was just a signal to remind Rog to be prepared in advance. As for the Holy Light Sealing Sword that followed, it was purely a smokescreen for Mephisto. Mephisto's perception was indeed outstanding. But no matter how outstanding his perception was, he couldn't tell if Rog had only sealed the flow of chakra in his body or if the chakra had been sealed by the Holy Light Sealing Sword. According to the plan, after Cynthia's soul ascended to heaven, Doom should immediately remove the restraints on Rog. However, Doom, who was too emotional, temporarily forgot about this matter. Therefore, there was an awkward problem. Rog could indeed remove the seal on his body and let chakra flow again. If necessary, he could even use the Ninetails' chakra to forcefully break free from the shackles of the Chains of God and the Holy Light Sealing Sword. But this way, he would have to give up on the plan to take something from Mephisto and return to the human world empty-handed. Dumb, can you wake up quickly? Your mother has already gone to heaven. Rog silently Doom. Doom, you. Before Doom could recover, Mephisto spoke first. Fool, that's right, we were fooling you. After hearing Mephisto's angry voice, Doom finally regained his senses. Doom released the Chains of God in his right hand and removed the Holy Light Sealing Sword on Rog. None of you can leave this place alive. Mephisto was completely enraged. In hell, in the world he ruled, he was actually fooled by two fellows from Earth. To Mephisto's, this was an intolerable humiliation. In an instant, the sky changed color. The sky darkened, and in the blink of an eye, it turned from day to night. At the same time, the power of hell that filled every corner of hell boiled like boiling water. Destruction, death, brutality, madness, chaos, an indescribable will silently enveloped the entire infernal realm. The will of hell. The sleeping will of hell was forcefully awakened by Mephisto. The moment the will of hell awakened, Rog, who had just broken free from his restraints, and Doom, who was floating in the air, immediately felt a terrifying pressure that they could not resist. The awakened will of hell began to target them, two creatures that did not belong to hell. When the will of hell was in slumber, they could more or less feel the repulsion from hell. But that repulsion was far from comparable to now. When the will of hell was asleep, it was as if they had entered a party that they were not welcome at. Although they would feel a strong sense of incompatibility, they would not be attacked. But it was different now. The will of hell had awakened. They were still in that unwelcome party, but this time, everyone in the party had picked up a weapon and intended to kill the two of them. Being directly suppressed by the will of hell was not a good thing. I'll buy you 10 seconds. I don't care what method you use, you must open the portal. Otherwise, we'll become Mephisto's playthings together. After saying that, Rog directly mobilized the hellfire that he had plundered from the Ghost Rider. Using hellfire in front of the will of hell and Mephisto was not a very wise thing to do. But at this time, hellfire was the only power in Rog's hands that could slightly alleviate the suppression of the will of hell. When the orange-red hellfire completely enveloped him, the terrifying suppression brought by the will of hell was alleviated a lot, allowing him to prepare his next means more calmly. Susanoo. Without any hesitation, Rog switched the Byakugan to the Mangekyo Sharingan, and at the same time activated the Susanoo that he had been training for a month. The more than 10 meters tall Susanoo quickly took shape, completely enveloping him and Doom. Unlike the previous Susanoo, what Rog is using now is the third form of the Black Tengu armor, which has a significant increase in defensive power. However, the most eye-catching thing is not the Black Tengu armor on the Susanoo's body, but the round shield in the Susanoo's left hand, which is branded with magatama and spiral patterns, like a burning flame, and the gourd in the right hand. Yata no Kagami, Tatsuka sword. After cultivating the Susanoo to the third form, Rog Susanoo has the same Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword as Uchiha Itachi. The system gave Rog the Mangekyo rune that is very similar to Uchiha Itachi's, and also gave him the Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword that Uchiha Itachi once had. To be precise, it is a temporary Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword. Although there is a limit to the number of uses, after knowing that his Susanoo also has Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword, Rog no longer has any complaints about his Mangekyo rune. Isn't it just a high imitation of Uchiha Itachi's Mangekyo rune? It doesn't matter, this is a trivial matter. Just after Rog used Susanoo, Mephisto's attack arrived in front of him. At this time, Mephisto didn't use any fancy attack methods. Energy impact. A pure and terrifying energy impact containing the power of hell. When this terrifying impact, which was enough to completely change the terrain, arrived in front of him, Rog didn't hesitate and directly blocked it with Yata mirror. Yata mirror, which can reflect and defend against all attacks, is really that powerful? Now is the best time to test it. The terrifying blood-red energy impact crashed into the Yata no Kagami like a roaring flood. This terrifying energy impact lasted for a full 4 or 5 seconds before it ended. When the energy impact was over, Yata mirror in Susanoo's hand once again revealed its true appearance. Unscathed. Yata mirror blocked Mephisto's energy impact. Although Dum didn't know what kind of existence Yata mirror was. But after seeing Yata mirror block Mephisto's attack unscathed, he found that he had seriously underestimated Rog's strength. With Yata mirror alone, Rog could ignore most of his attacks. Not only was Dum shocked by Yata mirror's amazing defensive power, but even Mephisto in the distance also showed a dignified look. Although the energy impact just now wasn't his full strength attack, it was still an attack he sent out in a serious state. But soon, he put away the doubts in his heart and raised his right hand again. In the blink of an eye, another wave of energy that was even more powerful arrived in front of Rog. Boom! Unlike the previous attack, when the energy impact hit the Yata no Kagami, it exploded like an intercontinental missile hitting the target. The huge explosion sound and the explosion of energy instantly engulfed Rog's Susanoo. A few seconds later, when everything returned to normal, cracks appeared on Yata mirror in Susanoo's hand. Fortunately, Yata mirror itself was a spiritual weapon without a physical body, so these cracks were quickly repaired by Rog's chakra and returned to its original appearance. Can you hurry up? I can't hold on any longer. The Yata mirror that Rog had now was not the real Yata mirror. His current Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword were both temporary items given by the system, and they were existences that would disappear after they were used up. 3 times. He only had 3 chances to use Yata mirror and Tatsuka sword. Rog did not intend to waste all the chances of Yata mirror on Mephisto, so the limit he could bear was 1 time. As long as Yata mirror was broken, it would be counted as 1 time. If he wanted to continue using Yata mirror, he could only use up 1 more chance. Stop rushing me, it's almost done. Although the portal on Earth would automatically open when the time was right, Rog and Doom did not have that kind of time at all. By the time the portal opened according to the set time, the grass on their graves was already several meters tall. Standing in front of them now was not Mephisto, who was just playing around, but a completely enraged Heavenly Father. Chapter 472. Although Rog also had the strength of a demigod, in front of a Heavenly Father, his strength was far from enough. The difference in strength between a demigod and a Heavenly Father was not something that could be made up for with numbers. Even if Rog had Doom's help now, it would still be useless. It would be fine if Mephisto was just playing around. But once he became serious, and this was the hell he ruled, even if Rog and Doom did their best, their chances of winning would not exceed 10%. Although this winning rate seemed cruel, it was already the highest winning rate they could achieve. If they made any more mistakes, their chances of winning would not even reach 5%. After 2 consecutive attacks failed to shatter the Yada mirror, Mephisto finally decided to use his full strength. For Mephisto, this was just something that needed to be taken seriously. But for Rog and Doom, it was something that needed to be done with all their might. Just like before, Mephisto did not use any fancy attacks. Instead, he sent out an energy attack that symbolized the strength of a heavenly father. Unlike the previous 2 energy shockwaves, this energy shockwave was pure black. A deep black that symbolized death and nirvana. This black energy attack seemed to break through space and instantly appeared in front of Rog, taking the initiative to collide with the Yada mirror in Susanu's hand. There was no terrifying explosion, no uncontrollable energy turbulence, no unstoppable terrifying impact. This black energy was like an illusory bubble as it crashed into the Yada no Kagami. Then, it silently shattered and dissipated. Mephisto's full-strength attack did not display any terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth. Instead, it was like a silent joke. However, the moment this black energy dissipated, the Yada mirror in Susanu's left hand shattered with a loud bang. Bang! The Yada mirror, which was said to be able to defend against all attacks, shattered like a mirror under Mephisto's full-strength attack. At the same time, Susanu's left hand also shattered inch by inch. Susanu was just a product of Chakra's materialization. But at this moment, Mephisto's black energy impact directly connected the Susanu to the caster, Rog. Susanu's left hand disappeared, and Rog's left hand also seemed to have been hit by a terrifying attack, and bright red blood burst out. F***CK. The intense pain made Rog curse out loud. Even so, he still controlled the hellfire around his body to incinerate the blood that spurted out, not letting his blood drip onto the ground. After dealing with the crisis of leaving blood in hell, he mobilized chakra and performed a temporary treatment on his left hand that suddenly exploded. He didn't need to completely heal his left hand. As long as the wound stopped bleeding, his immortal body would automatically finish the rest of the work. Even if he did not activate chakra, the immortal body would automatically heal the injury on his left hand. However, in this way, he would have to constantly pay attention to whether or not his blood would fall to the ground unknowingly. Fresh blood was a very useful medium in the field of magic. Rog did not want Mephisto to get his blood and then use it as a medium to cast several fatal curses on him. Yada no Kagami broke in the end. After blocking 3 attacks from Mephisto, Yada no Kagami ended its mission. The teleportation portal is ready. After paying the price of 1 use of Yada no Kagami, Dum finally opened the portal back to Earth. You go first. I still have some personal grudges to deal with. Rog said calmly to Dum without turning back. Personal grudges? Dum was stunned. However, he did not hesitate for long. He directly walked into the portal less than a meter away and returned to his castle. Mephisto, this is the second and last time. Next time, the one who will escape will be you. Rog said loudly to Mephisto in the distance. No, you won't have a next chance. As he spoke, Mephisto raised his right hand again and summoned a pure black energy ball that was only 1 meter in diameter. This was an energy ball that looked like a black hole. Mephisto did not care about the portal behind Rog, because Rog would not have the chance to walk through it at all. Is that so? But that's not up to you. As soon as he said that, Rog controlled Susanu, and let Susanu, which only had its right hand left, hold the gourd hanging on its hand. When Susanu held the gourd like it was holding a sword, the wine in the gourd flew out and condensed into a long sword burning with golden flames. Tatsuka sword. Unlike Yada no Kagami, Tatsuka sword's 3 chances were 3 chances to attack. As long as Yata no Kagami did not break, no matter how many attacks it blocked, it would only count as one chance. Tatsuka sword was different. As long as it attacked the target, it would count as one chance. The sword is not bad, but unfortunately, it's not. Before Mephisto could finish speaking, the Tatsuka sword formed by golden flames appeared in front of him and pierced his body. The speed of the Tatsuka sword's attack was beyond Mephisto's imagination. However, he still did not take the Tatsuka sword's attack to heart, even if he had been pierced by the Tatsuka sword. Do you think an attack of this level can defeat me? After feeling the power of the Tatsuka sword, Mephisto laughed disdainfully, mocking Rog for overestimating himself. I never said that I would use this move to defeat you. For some reason, after seeing Rog's calm expression, Mephisto realized that something was wrong. However, he soon realized what was wrong. The Tatsuka sword did not cause any serious injuries to his body, but began to forcibly seal his body. No, to be precise, it was not a seal, but a forceful pull of his body into another world. The Tatsuka sword, also known as the Sakura Tachi, was a sealed sword without a physical body. As long as it was stabbed, it could seal the target, forever, in a drunken dreamlike illusory world. And unlike ordinary illusory worlds, the Tatsuka sword's illusory world sealed not only the target's spirit and soul, but also the target's body. Orochimaru, who had used the Orochi Jutsu, was sealed in a gourd by Uchiha Itachi. Hit by the Tatsuka sword, Mephisto's body began to deform rapidly, becoming like dough that was being pulled, showing a form that did not conform to common sense at all. How could this be? Mephisto had never seen an existence like the Tatsuka sword, not even a similar existence. It could even be said that the Tatsuka sword was completely beyond Mephisto's understanding. Mephisto was indeed a lord of hell, and in his long life, he had seen all kinds of strange things. But unfortunately, the Tatsuka sword used by Rog was not a product that should appear in this world at all. Whether it was the attribute of power, the principle, or the form, it did not belong to this world. Even if Mephisto was a heavenly father, it was impossible for him to know the knowledge of other worlds. If he could do this, he would not be a heavenly father, but a multiverse-level existence, or even a higher-level existence. As his body continued to deform, the black hole-like energy ball that Mephisto had summoned also shattered with a bang, completely collapsing. What was even more troublesome was that his body was constantly being pulled into the gourd by the Tatsuka sword. Damn it! Although Mephisto did not have a fixed form, there was one thing that he could not avoid, and that was, his demon core was in his body. Rog had never expected the Tatsuka sword to completely seal Mephisto. No matter how magical the Tatsuka sword was, it was impossible to seal a Heavenly Father-level existence. His goal from the beginning was Mephisto's core. Or a part of Mephisto's core. Unlike humans, everything about a hell demon was in their core. Whether it was their power or their knowledge, they were all stored in their core. Taking away their core was no different from taking away their life. Of course, a Heavenly Father-level existence like Mephisto would definitely not allow others to take away his core. However, even if he could only take away a small part of his core, Rog would be satisfied. Because this meant that he had permanently taken away a part of Mephisto's power. If the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, was a high and mighty god, then the current Rog was a blasphemer who was stealing the authority of a god. When a part of his body was completely pulled into the Tatsuka sword's gourd, Mephisto finally made a decision. He took the initiative to give up a part of his body that was sealed. If he had enough time, he could completely break the Tatsuka sword seal. Unfortunately, he did not have such time now. After realizing that he could not change the outcome for the time being, Mephisto displayed the decisiveness and determination that a hell demon should have. He took the initiative to give up a part of his body and peeled off a part of his core that he could no longer break free from the seal. After splitting the important core into two, Mephisto separated a brand new body and broke free from the Tatsuka sword seal. Thank you for your hospitality. Seeing that Mephisto had taken the initiative to give up a part of his core and reformed his body in the distance, Rog raised his right hand to his left chest and bowed slightly. Then, he exerted some strength in his legs and jumped into the portal. The moment he entered the portal, he removed Susanoo to avoid putting too much pressure on the portal. In the end, Rog completed his initial goal and left Hell alive with a part of Mephisto's core. When he returned to Earth, Dum did not hesitate and directly destroyed the portal he had created. Have you always been so crazy? Chapter 473. Crazy? You call this crazy? Rog moved his left hand, which had yet to fully recover, and turned to ask doubtfully. You. Forget it. I'll arrange for someone to send the magic information you want now. Looking at Rog's calm face, Dum felt for the first time that he had never really seen through Rog's thoughts. Ever since he knew of Rog's existence, Dum had always thought that Rog was someone who would only act according to his mood. But now, he felt that he had guessed wrong. Rog was not a straightforward person at all. He was a lunatic who walked between madness and calmness. When he was calm, he could persuade others with his eloquence alone. He was so meticulous that it was as if he could see through other people's thoughts. When he went crazy, he was a lunatic who did not even care about the lords of hell. These two completely different personalities appeared in him at the same time, making him extremely difficult to guess. Even if one interacted with him day and night, one might not be able to guess his true thoughts. Dum was not worried that his opponent would be meticulous, nor was he worried that his opponent would be crazy and unruly. But he did not want his opponent to be someone who repeatedly jumped between calmness and madness. It was a very troublesome thing to be an opponent with such a person. Especially when this person had extraordinary strength, it would make it even more difficult for one to attack. After destroying the teleportation portal to Hell, Dum brought Rog back to the original reception hall and waited for the guards to send the reward that Rog wanted. When do you plan to go to Hell next? While waiting, Dum asked a question that he was rather curious about. Although Dum had returned to Earth first, he had also heard the last conversation between Rog and Mephisto, so he took the initiative to bring up this topic. I'm not sure yet. If it's fast, I might go in a few months. If it's slow, it might even be 8 to 10 years. Rog answered silently and carefully checked his body. On one hand, he did not want to leave any hidden injuries on his body. On the other hand, he wanted to check if Mephisto had secretly left any marks or tricks on his body. One couldn't be too careful when dealing with Hell's demons, especially when dealing with a Lord of Hell like Mephisto. May I ask why you still want to go? You've already seen Mephisto's strength. It's not a wise thing to make him your enemy in Hell. Dum could not figure out why Rog had to go to Hell. Hell wasn't a tourist attraction, not to mention a powerful existence like the Lord of Hell, Mephisto. Most importantly, Rog had already offended Mephisto to the core. As long as Rog appeared in Hell, Dum could guarantee that Mephisto's would definitely attack him with all his might without any hesitation or pity. Although Dum did not know what kind of existence the sword of Tatsuka that Rog had used at the end was, he knew that Rog's sword had directly taken away a portion of Mephisto's power. As a professional scholar who had studied Hell and Mephisto for more than 10 years, Dum knew very well what this meant. It's simple, because I don't like to lose. After confirming that there were no hidden dangers in his body, Rog replied with a smile. You want to go to Hell again just because of this reason? Dum realized that he could not keep up with Rog's thoughts. Isn't this a very normal thing? As the saying goes, you have to get up from where you fall. Including this time, I've already lost to Mephisto twice, so no matter what, I have to go to Hell to get back at him. Rog's reply was very casual, but his answer made Dum confirm once again that he was a lunatic. It was normal to not like to lose. Competition and the unwillingness to admit defeat were innate instincts of life. Those who chose to live a comfortable life and did not want to improve had long been eliminated in the long river of evolution. I'm beginning to understand why you were able to become the famous fourth Hokage in just a few years. After saying that, Dum fell silent and waited patiently for the guards to arrive. Both Rog and Dum were very patient people. For the rest of the time, they just looked at each other without saying a word, as if whoever spoke first would admit defeat. After this oppressive silence lasted for nearly 30 minutes, Dum's robot guards finally pushed Rog's reward in. These intelligent robot guards pushed carts that looked like food delivery carts in, one after another, one after another. When the last robot pushed the cart in, the originally spacious living room became as crowded as a market. These are the magic materials you asked for, all of them are here. Dum pointed to the magic books piled up like a small hill on the cart and said calmly. I was just wondering whether you would give me the printed version or the electronic version of the materials. I didn't expect you to be more generous than I thought, actually handing over the original directly. Rog casually picked up the nearest thick magic book and skimmed through a few pages. Similar to the books in the Camartage library, this magic book was an ancient book that had been passed down for many years. You helped me save my mother, this reward is nothing. Dum did not mind Rog taking away these ancient books. Not to mention that he had already read the contents of these magic books, even if he forgot in the future, he still had many backups. One of the benefits of the technological era was that the storage and circulation of knowledge had become extremely simple. Even the manufacturing principle of nuclear weapons could be easily found on the internet. For example, in the 1970s, an economics student at Harvard University in the United States, relied on the public information in the library to complete a 400-page, How to Make a Nuclear Bomb. Note 1, this was still something that happened in the 1970s, when the internet was just a few years old. The internet at that time was not the same as the internet today. After all, the internet with search functions was only invented in 1989. I'm very satisfied with this reward. While talking, a chakra hand formed by chakra rushed out of Rog's body, collected the magic books on these small cars one by one, and then threw them all into the summon scroll. Looking at the chakra hand that rushed out of Rog's body, Dum's evaluation of him improved slightly. It's not difficult to build energy into the shape you want. But condensing hundreds of large and small energy arms of different lengths at one time like Rog and performing exquisite control of these arms is not something that anyone can do. To be precise, not many people can do it. This level of control not only requires an extremely precise level of energy control, but also requires the user to have a computer-like multithreading processing ability to achieve this level of control of hundreds of arms at the same time. Just as Rog put away the summon scroll and planned to open the portal back to Konoha's headquarters, Dum spoke again, this time, I owe you a favor. If you hadn't proposed this plan, I wouldn't have been able to redeem my mother's soul. If you need any help in the future, you can contact me at any time. When Rog showed his superb level of energy control, Dum decided to establish more contact with him. It's always good to establish a relationship with such a strong person. You don't owe me a favor, this is just a fair cooperation. You saved your mother, and I got the reward I wanted. An exchange of equal value is a fair trade. Rog pointed to the cars that had been completely emptied. Of course, this was only what he said to Dum on the surface. What he really wanted was ninja coins that Dum didn't know about at all. When he put all the magic books that Dum promised into the summon scroll, he opened the commission page of the system and took a look. Commission content: assist Dr. Dum to free Cynthia's soul, commission status, completed, commission reward, 250 ninja coins sent. With the 250 ninja coins, the number of ninja coins he had not consumed reached 910, and he was only 90 ninja coins away from the final 1000 ninja coins mark. But speaking of helping, I do have a plan. I don't know if you are interested. Rog didn't directly refuse Dum's kindness. What plan? Dum asked calmly. Flame Giant Surtur, you should know him, right? Rog didn't directly say what his plan was. If Dum didn't even know who the Flame Giant Surtur was, he wasn't qualified to join his plan. The flame giant Surtur is the ruler of Muspelheim, but it is said that he was defeated by Asgard Odin a long time ago, and his most important treasure, the eternal fire, was taken away. As a person who once pursued the mysteries of magic all over the world, Dum was certainly not unfamiliar with Surtur. If he had a way to go to other countries in the 9 worlds, he would have already gone to see other countries in the 9 worlds. The eternal fire is now with me. As soon as his voice fell, Rog summoned a small cluster of eternal fire and let the eternal fire burn slowly on his fingertips. You actually got the eternal fire, then it seems that the news that Odin is dead some time ago is not a rumor. Although Dum hasn't been to other planets and countries, it doesn't mean that his information channels are blocked. For a sorcerer, especially a sorcerer who has mastered many magic, it is not particularly difficult to communicate with a life in other countries. Odin did fall, but this has nothing to do with my plan. Because the place I am going to go is Muspelheim. Tell me about your plan. Dum also began to wonder what Rog was planning. How about the plan to conquer Muspelheim? Looking at Dum, who had obviously been interested, Rog said calmly. Chapter 474. Conquer Muspelheim? Doom was stunned when he heard Rog's answer. He thought he was a daring person, but compared to Rog's craziness, he felt that his little craziness was nothing. Muspelheim was the kingdom of the flame giants. It was a place equivalent to the infernal inferno to humans. No, conquer Muspelheim. Although there are many flame giants in Muspelheim, the only one who can be considered a powerhouse is Surtur, and Surtur isn't in a good state right now. Ever since Odin took away his eternal fire, his strength has shown a steep decline. As long as we can get rid of Surtur, the remaining flame giants are nothing to be afraid of. Finding trouble with Surtur was not a temporary plan that Rog came up with on a whim, but an operation that he had seriously considered the risks and rewards. Thor, who had not completely awakened the divine power of thunder, could single-handedly deal with Surtur who did not have the eternal fire. Therefore, the risk of the operation was not particularly high. In addition to Surtur being in a weakened state, another main reason was that Rog had taken a fancy to his weapon, the Twilight Sword. The Twilight Sword was the best weapon for the eternal fire. As long as he had the Twilight Sword, he could use the eternal fire in his hands to the greatest extent, unlike now, where he could only use the eternal fire as an ordinary energy source or flame. Even if he had the Twilight Sword, he would not be able to exert the power of the eternal fire to the limit like Surtur, but it would still be more efficient than his current use. I need a few days to think about it. After a week, no matter what the outcome is, I will inform you. If Rog was only planning to do something on Earth, Doom would not hesitate and agree immediately. However, Rog's plan had completely exceeded his imagination, so he could not make a decision immediately. Although in the eyes of others, Professor of Destruction Doom was a rather crazy person, in fact, he still paid great attention to his own safety. If it was not necessary, Doom would never risk his life. There's no hurry. Even if we set off, it will be at least a month later. If you've made up your mind, you can contact me anytime. After saying that, Rog opened the portal back to Konoha's headquarters and returned directly from Dum's castle to the office of Konoha's headquarters. When the portal that was flashing with golden sparks completely closed, he sat on the sofa and began to review the Hell operation this time. In terms of results, this Hell operation had perfectly achieved its goal. The soul of Cynthia, Dum's mother, was redeemed and she ascended to heaven. Part of Mephisto's core had been sealed as well, weakening part of Mephisto's strength. This was a good foundation for the next final battle. The commission was completed, and he got the ninja coins. According to common sense, Rog should be extremely satisfied at this time. However, his current mood had nothing to do with satisfaction at all. The Lord of Hell, Mephisto, was stronger than he had imagined. Rog had thought that he would be able to go toe-to-toe with Mephisto's this time since he had improved his strength further. However, it turned out that in front of the serious Mephistos, he was far behind. If his Susanoo didn't happen to have Yata no Kagami and Tatsuka sword, he definitely wouldn't have been able to block Mephisto's last 3 attacks. The serious Mephistos proved one thing with facts, that is, the full-strength attack of a heavenly father is terrifying. Yata no Kagami, which claimed to be able to defend and reflect all attacks, only took 3 attacks before it was completely shattered. The Tatsuka sword, which claimed to be able to seal the enemy forever as long as it hits the enemy, only sealed a small part of Mephisto's core in the end. And this result was achieved when Mephistos didn't understand the Tatsuka sword at all. In the next battle, Mephistos will definitely not be hit so easily. Difficult to deal with. These old monsters who have lived for who knows how many years, each one more difficult than the other. After rubbing his temples, Rog temporarily put aside his thoughts about the final battle with Mephistos and teleported back to his room. After a comfortable hot bath, he put on the gaming helmet that he brought back from the Carry Empire and started playing the game that he jokingly called Bug 2077, Carry Cyber 7702. He didn't know if the developer of this game was rushing the production too much, but this holographic game that opened Rog's eyes had a lot of bugs. What was even more magical was that because this was a first-person visual game set in the future, sometimes you couldn't tell if it was a bug or a special part that the developer had specially set up. For example, there was a mission called Black Dream. Rog thought that it was a plot arrangement that caused the character's mechanical eye to be blinded, so he could only carry out the mission with a black screen. Just as he was feeling emotional about the developer's amazing imagination and was about to enter the mission for the second time to experience this wonderful feeling again, he suddenly realized that the black screen visual effect he had experienced before was not set up by the developer, but purely a bug. It was just that this mission happened to be called Black Dream, and with only the system prompt, he could still rush through it. That was why this seemingly deliberate design, but it was actually a system bug, was created. Note 1, although this game had more bugs than any game Rog had ever played, this did not stop him from liking this game. Because this game was really awesome, it presented the players with a real world of Carry in the year 7702. Just as Rog was relieving the pressure from the battle with Mephistos through the game, a fierce argument broke out in a rest area in the headquarters. Am I the only one who thinks that this is a pretty cool thing? Johnny Thunderbolt said to Reed and the other 2 disapprovingly. Can you be more mature? The special forces aren't about flirting with girls. You don't have that kind of strength yet. Susan looked at Johnny helplessly, trying to get Johnny to dispel the idea of joining Konoha's special forces. After a month of adaptation, Susan and others have become familiar with various superpowers. At least their bodies will no longer suddenly soften or disappear, or suddenly burn their clothes. Come on, it's not like you haven't seen my training record, I graduated with high scores. Since Johnny learned that Konoha Special Forces members could emit high temperatures, and some of them could even breathe fire, he had an obsession to join the Special Forces. For this reason, he also specifically went to Frank the Punisher and applied for a recruit training spot with Frank. In the beginning, there was no such thing as recruit training in Konoha. Those who can be selected by Konoha are basically elite warriors in their respective units or organizations. However, not every one of these selected elite warriors is qualified to accept the extremist transformation and become a real Konoha Special Forces member. Therefore, there is a so-called recruit training. Simply put, these recruits are the alternate members of Konoha Special Forces. But before they have been transformed by extremists, they can't be regarded as real Special Forces members. Johnny joined the recruit training and passed the assessment with high scores. Because he has superpowers himself, he doesn't need to be transformed by extremists to directly become a member of Konoha Special Forces. However, just when he planned to officially join the Special Forces, Susan and the others learned about it, and then the current quarrel occurred. In terms of age, Johnny is now a very mature adult. But in the view of his sister Susan, Johnny has always been the child who has not grown up. Susan is not the only one who has this view, Reed and Ben also have the same view. In addition, Ben also joined Konoha's special forces earlier than Johnny. Johnny wants to join the special forces, in addition to knowing that the special forces members have been transformed by extremists. Another reason is Ben's joining. If Ben can join, then why can't I? This is what Johnny really thinks. Even before the mutation, Johnny would compare himself with Ben intentionally or unintentionally. As long as it is something that can be done instinctively, he must do it. No means no. If it was something else, Susan might have softened her heart and agreed. After all, Johnny has done a lot of outrageous things before. But Johnny wants to join the special forces. She will not agree to anything. Although Susan has only joined Konoha for a month, she knows very well what kind of department Konoha's special forces is. It seems that our new little brother is going to be scolded by his sister again. So pitiful. Just as the quarrel between Susan and Johnny was about to get more and more intense, a malicious voice came over. The person who spoke was none other than Gecko Ishikawa, who had just returned to Konoha after completing a mission. At this time, Kara was still wearing her white gold uniform that could completely highlight her figure, showing her charm without concealing it. After hearing Kara's words, both Susan and Johnny showed dissatisfaction. Susan was dissatisfied because she didn't like Kara's way of watching the fun without thinking too much about it. Johnny was dissatisfied because he had been taught a lesson by Kara. Johnny, who had a flamboyant personality, became even more arrogant and presumptuous after awakening his superpowers. In addition, he was originally more flirtatious, so he was quickly attracted to Kara. However, on Kara, Johnny realized for the first time what it meant to have a low damage, but a very insulting blow. Johnny confidently showed his superpowers to Kara, and then, he was hit by Kara's even more unreasonable superpowers. Unwilling to admit defeat, he proposed to spar with Kara, and then, the blow became even bigger. His superpowers were not as good as Kara's, and he couldn't beat Kara in actual combat. What really made him more and more frustrated was that Kara would tease him from time to time by saying that he would only listen to his sister's words, just like now. Chapter 475. Just as Susan was about to say something, Kala took the initiative to leave and didn't continue to taunt Johnny. After watching the graceful figure of Kala leave the rest area, Johnny couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If Kala continued to stay here, he didn't know what she would say next. Johnny had a deep understanding of Kala's ability to taunt people. Johnny didn't know that before Kala became the superhero Moonlight Stone, she was a famous Ph.D. in psychology. Kara could tell what he was thinking at a glance. This is the main reason why Johnny has always been under Kala's control. The longer he stayed in Konoha, the more Johnny felt that the heroes in Konoha are all talents in the true sense. Even the Abomination and the Red Tank, who seemed to be the most brainless of them all, had a shocking level of tactical accomplishment and strategy. Although they give the impression that they are barbarian soldiers with strong limbs and simple minds, in fact, they are excellent commanders. Leading the team to execute the team and formulate tactical plans is as simple as eating for them. After Kala left, Johnny didn't continue to argue with Susan. Whether Susan agrees or not, he will join the special forces and become a field agent of Konoha. Even if Susan is his sister, she can't change his decision. When Johnny, Susan, and the others left the resting area became quiet again. Time passed day by day. When Johnny insisted on joining the special forces despite Susan's opposition, he finally received his first field mission. Because Johnny was a complete newbie, he was assigned by Punisher Frank to join the special forces led by Daisy, which had the highest success rate and the lowest casualty rate. Although Rog didn't specifically instruct Frank and others, they can see that Rog is very concerned about the new members of Konoha. In fact, Rog only cares about Reed and Susan. However, from Frank's point of view, Rog only cared about Reed and the other three. After all, they were the only ones who had their individual hero names and team names confirmed by Rog. Konoha Headquarters, 5th Battle Room. According to the tip-off, there are suspected werewolves and vampires in the Los Angeles area. The local police and the FBI reported the case to Konoha's Los Angeles branch. Now, these cases are in our hands. The mission is very simple. If these werewolves and vampires are willing to abide by Konoha's rules, we just need to register them. If they don't want to abide by Konoha's rules, we will tell them the price of not following the rules. The specific information of the target has been sent to your combat computer. To appear in 15 minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. The one giving the mission briefing was Johnny's current captain, Shockwave Girl Daisy. Daisy's partner was originally Quicksilver. But Quicksilver was assigned to the Abominations team by Punisher Frank, so Johnny replaced Quicksilver and joined Daisy's team. In addition to the two of them, there would also be a standard 6-man Special Forces team set off with them. Generally, tasks will only be carried out the 6-person Special Forces. Only tasks involving extraordinary power will be led by superheroes such as Daisy. Well, I want to ask, are we now sure that they are werewolves and vampires? Johnny pointed to the targets on the combat computer that looked no different from ordinary people and asked doubtfully. It's not completely confirmed yet, but we can't rule out that they are imitators. Daisy replied calmly. Since the appearance of aliens and superheroes, more and more people with superpowers have emerged. Of course, there are still a few people with extraordinary powers. So, there are so-called imitators. These imitators were all ordinary people, but they had a perverted obsession with supernatural powers. Therefore, they imitated certain legendary existences and pretended that they were supernatural beings. These imitators are not in the minority. Nearly half of the extraordinary cases received by Konoha were done by these imitators. If they are imitators, do we need to hand them over to the local police? Johnny asked a question that was extremely new to him. As soon as he finished, he saw the other special forces looking at him like he was an idiot. No. Even if they are imitators, they will be imprisoned by Konoha. Daisy frowned and answered patiently. The so-called imprisonment by Konoha is just a nicer way to put it. Konoha's special prison is a secret place that even ordinary members of Konoha can't enter. And so far, none of the prisoners who were imprisoned in Konoha's special prison have been able to come out. Oh, I understand. 15 minutes later, when Daisy was about to lead Johnny and the special forces to board the Quinjet, a brilliant aurora-like light lit up beside Daisy. The people of Konoha are no stranger to this sudden light, because in the whole of Konoha, only Rog can do this. When the brilliant light disappeared, Rog appeared in front of Daisy and the others. You are going to Los Angeles to capture werewolves and vampires? Rog asked Daisy. Yes, we just received a tip from the branch. Daisy looked at Rog in confusion and answered silently. I will go with you for this mission. You are still the commander, just treat me as an ordinary member of the Special Forces. After that, Rog took the initiative to board the Quinjet. Only now did Daisy and the others realize that Rog was wearing the standard combat uniform of Konoha's Special Forces. Black combat uniform, standard combat vest, standard explosive rifle and pistol, and a series of supporting combat equipment. What's going on? Is there another secret behind the werewolves and vampires in Los Angeles? Looking at Rog, who was no different from the other members of the Special Forces, Daisy, Johnny, and the others all showed a puzzled look. As far as they could remember, Rog would only personally take action when he encountered a major event. But the werewolves and vampires in Los Angeles didn't look like they would cause any major harm. With a head full of questions, Daisy, Johnny, and the others boarded the Quinjet and flew toward Los Angeles. Rog knew that Daisy and the others must be full of questions now, but he didn't give any explanation. He couldn't tell Daisy and the others that he was tired of playing virtual games, so he wanted to experience a real mission. Half an hour ago, Rog successfully cleared Kripunk 7702. He didn't plan to open the second round for the time being, but he just learned from number 2 that Daisy was leading a team to Los Angeles. So, the idea of a live-action role-playing game appeared in his mind. No matter how realistic the holographic virtual game was, it couldn't compare to the real world. Since the establishment of Konoha, he had never really carried out any of Konoha's missions. So, he made the decision to temporarily join Daisy's team. Since he had nothing to do, it would be good to go and see the werewolves and vampires. And he also wanted to know if these werewolves and vampires were the same as in his memory. Blade Warrior, Dracula, Mobius, Blood Baron, these were the more famous vampires in his memory. Is there anything wrong with those werewolves and vampires? After a long struggle, Daisy couldn't help but ask Rog. I don't know, I don't have more information in my hands than you. Also, you are the commander of this operation, you shouldn't ask me this kind of question. Rog perfectly integrated into the identity of a special force member and answered Daisy's question. Looking at Rog, who was obviously not right, Daisy was even more confused. Daisy would never have thought that Rog at this time wanted to experience the real actions of a special force member. Konoha's headquarters was located on the east coast of the United States, and their destination, Los Angeles, was located on the west coast. The two were more than 3,700 kilometers apart, and an ordinary flight would take at least 5 hours to arrive. Even if they were on a Quinjet, it would take at least 3 or 4 hours. According to Rog's personality, he would never waste time on such a long flight. If he had the time, wouldn't it be better to play a few more games? But now, he didn't directly teleport like before, but he honestly took the Quinjet. This was a completely unimaginable thing for Daisy, who was familiar with his personality. Perhaps it was because of Rog's presence. The special force members in the Quinjet were very nervous, and they were almost sitting in the standard military posture. Jack, are you all afraid of me? Rog said to Jack, the special force member opposite him. Sir, no, Jack quickly said in a tone like he was reporting to a superior. But before he finished, he realized that something was wrong. I said, I'm just an ordinary special force member now, don't treat me as your superior. You only have her as your superior. After that, Rog pointed to Daisy sitting on his right. However, his explanation did not alleviate the tense atmosphere at all. Jack and the other members of the special forces were still in a tight spot. Damn it! How can I play live-action roleplay like this? Rog sighed helplessly. Then, he used transformation jutsu. Boom! When the white smoke completely dissipated, the familiar Rog had completely disappeared. Instead, there was a young man with blonde hair and a handsome face. In order to make these special force members relax, Rog changed his appearance and turned himself into Minato. Let me reintroduce myself, my name is Minato, code name Golden Flash, Konoha registration number 006510, I'm a recruit who just joined the special force. Chapter 476. I don't believe you. The transformation effect of the transformation jutsu is really magical, and it can make people look real. Although for ordinary people, it's almost impossible to see through the transformation jutsu with just the naked eye. However, this doesn't mean that the transformation jutsu can deceive others. This was especially true for someone like Logue, who didn't even bother to hide his transformation. What did you say your name was? Daisy felt that she seemed to know what Rog was doing. Namikaze Minato, you can call me Minato. Daisy shook her head helplessly as she looked at her face that seemed to glow with sunshine. Men were indeed creatures that would never grow up. Although they knew that the man who claimed to be Namikaze Minato was Rog, after he changed his appearance, Jack and the others became relaxed. At least they didn't have to sit up straight like before. What's this ability called? Can you only change into this appearance? Can you change into other appearances? Can you change into a woman? Johnny's contact with Rog was still relatively short, and he wasn't particularly familiar with Rog's ability. After seeing Rog instantly change into another appearance, he curiously asked as if he had discovered a new world. If it was any other time, Rog wouldn't mind satisfying Johnny's curiosity. But now, he only had one answer. Fixed body jutsu. Rog directly gave Johnny a fixed body jutsu that he hadn't used for a long time, making this overly curious guy completely quiet down. Although Johnny awakened his superpower, his physical strength didn't have any obvious changes. Especially when he didn't release flames around his body, he was a complete ordinary person. Rog suddenly fixed Johnny's behavior, making Daisy and the others stunned, but they quickly ignored it. Under Rog's active guidance, Jack and the others began to talk normally, and gradually returned to their original appearance of going on a mission. The depressing atmosphere in the cabin gradually disappeared, and in the midst of chatting, they finally flew over Los Angeles and landed in the hangar of Konoha's Los Angeles branch. The moment the cabin door opened, Jack and the others who were chatting became quiet again. They left the cabin without saying a word, like warriors rushing to the battlefield. Rog and the others didn't stay at the branch for too long. To be precise, after landing, they directly boarded the vehicles that had been prepared for them and drove towards their destination. There are more targets, so we'll split into 4 groups. Vulture Hound Team 1, Iceman Poker Team 1, Night Thunderbolt Fire Swordsman Team 1, Golden Flash You Follow Me. Vulture and Iceman will enter through the gate of Area B, and Night will enter through the back door. Standard operation procedure. Kill anyone who resists on the spot. While heading towards the target warehouse, Daisy quickly arranged the combat mission. Whether it's in Konoha or in other forces, they rarely call each other by their real names. For these warriors who walked on the edge of life and death, their code names were their heroic names. Other than Johnny, everyone present was an experienced expert. After Daisy arranged the mission, the Special Forces members began to check and prepare. Even Roger, who had joined the Special Forces at the last minute, started to check the equipment on his body. He is now Minato, a newcomer in the Special Forces, not the 4th Hokage, and not the director of Konoha's intelligence agency. And in this mission, if it is not necessary, he does not intend to use any ninjutsu or genjutsu. As for taijutsu, if he encounters hand-to-hand combat, there is no other way. Explosive rifles, explosive pistols, 3 energy grenades, 2 flash grenades, 2 smoke grenades, 2 combat daggers. The communicator is normal, the combat computer is normal, the combat helmet is normal. After checking all the equipment on his body, Rog put on the combat helmet connected to the combat computer. The combat helmets used by Konoha's Special Forces are specially customized. The lens in front of the helmet can not only project the information on the combat computer, but also transmit the view back to Konoha's headquarters at any time. When necessary, the lens can also be switched to night vision or infrared thermal imaging mode. On the helmet, there is also an independent communication system to facilitate individual communication within the team or to send messages to the nearest branch. A few minutes later, the action vehicle stopped on the street near the target warehouse. Action, start. The door opened, and the Special Forces members went to different areas according to the established plan. After the other 3 teams left, Daisy turned to look at Rog with a vigilant face and slowly said, "They have all left, do you still want to keep this appearance?" "Sir, I don't quite understand what you mean," Rog answered seriously. Looking at Rog's completely unfamiliar face, Daisy couldn't wait to give him a shock wave now. "Up to you." Just as Daisy was about to go to the warehouse gate, she suddenly remembered something. "Don't you want to play? Then I will play with you." Golden Flash. "Yes. Now I will give you a new order, take care of the guards at the gate to prevent the target from knowing our arrival. Use the dagger and be quiet." Daisy gave Rog a new order. "Yes, sir." After receiving Daisy's order, Rog raised the rifle in his hand and used the standard combat method to move forward step by step toward the warehouse gate. After carefully coming to a corner near the warehouse gate, Rog turned on the infrared thermal imaging mode on the combat helmet and began to search for the nearby guards. In the past, he would directly use Chakra's perception in this kind of situation. But now, he was only a Special Forces member, so he could only use the Special Forces way to solve the problem. 1, 2, 3, through the thermal imaging, Rog found the guards hidden near the gate one by one. In this seemingly inconspicuous warehouse, there were 5 guards near the gate. After confirming the target's location, he switched the thermal imaging to night vision mode, then put the rifle behind him and pulled out the combat dagger on his belt. Although he couldn't use ninjutsu and genjutsu, Rog still had experience. Relying on the skills he had honed in the previous battles, he arrived behind the nearest target. Ordinary people? When he used the thermal imaging, he couldn't determine whether these guards were werewolves or not. But now, he was 100% sure that this guard was an ordinary person. Even in human form, werewolves also have a far better sense of smell than humans. There would never be a situation where the enemy was behind them without them noticing. Although he felt that something was not quite right, he still appeared behind the guard like a ghost. The next second, his left hand covered the guard's mouth, and his right hand directly stabbed the guard's heart from the back. Backstab. Rog performed a real backstab and silently killed the guard. After dragging the guard's body to the corner, he walked to the next target. Even if he didn't use ninjutsu and genjutsu, assassinating these guards was not difficult for Rog. It only took him 2 or 3 minutes to assassinate all 5 guards near the gate without making any sound. The gate guards have been eliminated. I repeat, the gate guards have been eliminated. After reporting the results to Daisy, Rog put the blood-stained dagger back into his belt and picked up the blaster on his back again. It didn't take long for Daisy to come in front of Rog and casually looked at the body on the ground. Daisy thought that Rog was just bored and came to experience the task of the Special Forces. But she didn't expect that Rog actually treated himself as an ordinary person without extraordinary abilities and used ordinary assassination methods to kill these guards. Just as Daisy was about to say something, a huge explosion and a burst of wolf howls suddenly sounded in the warehouse. Are there really werewolves inside? When the battle in the warehouse started, Rog and Daisy didn't hesitate and immediately entered the warehouse from the gate. Although the sound of the blaster wasn't as fierce as ordinary gunfire, there was the unique sound of the energy beam cutting through the air. Just as Daisy was about to rush directly to the battle area, Rog behind her suddenly raised the muzzle and pulled the trigger at a huge figure above. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the red energy beam flew like a bullet toward the figure that was obviously not an ordinary human. Werewolf, it was a huge werewolf that was more than 2 meters tall. Although Rog rarely used the blaster, his shooting skills were no worse than a professional sniper. With only 3 or 4 shots, he hit the werewolf that was running around like a real beast on the walls and cargo boxes. Through the night vision mode, Rog could clearly see each of the werewolf's fangs. Goodbye. Without any hesitation, he directly aimed the muzzle at the werewolf's head and ended his life with an energy beam. This werewolf is weaker than I thought. After quickly killing the werewolf, Rog frowned slightly. Although he didn't have much hope for these werewolves, the level displayed by this werewolf was much lower than he thought. While he killed the werewolf with the blaster rifle, Daisy didn't stay idle. Her hands constantly released shockwaves and blasted away all the werewolves that tried to approach them. At the same time, a large number of flames suddenly burned inside the warehouse. Johnny the Thunderbolt made his move. Although there were many werewolves in the warehouse, in front of the Special Forces equipped with blasters, they weren't much stronger than ordinary humans. After transforming, werewolves could ignore ordinary gunpowder weapons. As long as they weren't continuously shot, ordinary pistols and rifles wouldn't cause much damage to them. Blasters, on the other hand, were completely different. Blasters did not fire metal bullets, but particle or plasma beams. Werewolves that were hit by the energy beam of a blaster usually only needed 1 or 2 shots to completely lose their ability to move. If they were hit in a vital spot, it was basically a one-shot death. Chapter 477. The battle in the warehouse was over soon. Although the werewolves had the numerical advantage, they were as fragile as ordinary humans in front of Konoha's special forces who did not care much about morality. After the war, Konoha's special forces began to clean up the battlefield and check if there were any werewolves that were not dead or hidden. 27 werewolves. This is the number of werewolves in the warehouse. However, this is not all the enemies that Rog and others destroyed. In addition to these 27 werewolves, they also eliminated 46 ordinary humans, including the 5 human guards who were assassinated by Rog at the beginning. No. There is something wrong with this mission. In previous missions, Konoha's special forces have dealt with imitators who have a morbid desire for supernatural powers. However, they have never encountered so many imitators gathered together. It would be fine if these imitators just gathered together. Perhaps they just wanted to share their experiences with each other. But the problem is that in addition to these imitators, there are real werewolves here, and there are a lot of werewolves. In the middle of the night, a group of werewolves and a group of imitators appeared in the same warehouse. This is not a normal phenomenon no matter how you look at it. Even Johnny, a rookie on his first mission, can see that something is wrong. Iceman, Poker, guard the perimeter. Vulture, Hound, Swordsman, search the warehouse. Knight, check these werewolves and imitators. After thinking for a few seconds, Daisy immediately issued the latest instructions. After Daisy gave the order, Knight and the others immediately took action. Rog and Johnny, on the other hand, became idle for the time being. Although Daisy did not arrange anything, Rog and Johnny are not the kind of people who can be idle. While Knight was busy checking the bodies, Rog also came to a nearby werewolf body and took out a dagger to check the body. After opening the mouth of the werewolf corpse with a dagger, he saw something on the werewolf's canine teeth that did not belong to a werewolf. On the 2 canine teeth of this werewolf, there is an abstract pattern like a blood rose. It is almost impossible to find the existence of these 2 patterns with the naked eye. If Rog hadn't studied magic in Camartage and was more sensitive to magic fluctuations, he wouldn't have been able to discover the existence of these 2 patterns. Of course, if he opened his Byakugan and Sharingan at this time, it would be a different story. After discovering these 2 unusual patterns, he went to another werewolf corpse and used his dagger to pry open its mouth. Sure enough, there was one. At this moment, he remembered some of the content he had browsed in Camartage. According to records, during the early Middle Ages in Europe, which was known as the Dark Ages, werewolves and vampires weren't mortal enemies like they were now. Note 1, at that time, werewolves were only the slaves and guards of vampires, responsible for the safety of vampires during the day. The phenomenon of werewolves being slaves continued all the way until the Dark Age. Until one day, a werewolf who didn't want to continue being a slave started a fight. Under the leadership of this werewolf, the werewolves were freed from the control of the vampires and had freedom that they had never had before. It was also from that time that the werewolves and vampires began the fateful battle that has continued to this day. There is something wrong with these werewolves. They have the magic mark of the vampires on their bodies, they are not ordinary werewolves. Putting away the dagger, Rog came in front of Daisy and told her about his discovery. Vampire magic? After hearing Rog's words, Daisy frowned slightly. Although Konoha has a lot of superpowers, the only ones who are really related to magic are Rog and Wangda. Yes, the magic of vampires. I don't know much about vampires, so I can't tell which clan of vampires did it. In the beginning, there were a total of 13 clans of vampires. However, under the double attack of the church and the werewolves, several vampire clans were completely wiped out, so there are only about 8 or 9 clans that still exist. Although Rog doesn't know which clan the blood rose pattern he just saw belongs to, one thing he can be sure of is that the vampires who imprinted the magic mark on these werewolves are not very strong. As soon as these werewolves died, the magic mark on their canine teeth began to fade gradually, which is a typical manifestation of the magic mark connected to the werewolf's vitality. Under normal circumstances, the magic mark, which does not consume much magic power, does not need to borrow the target's vitality. There is only one situation where this phenomenon occurs, that is, the spellcaster's own strength is not strong enough to imprint the magic mark for a long time, so this trick is used. Just as Daisy was about to continue to ask about vampires, Iceman and Poker, who were in charge of security, sent a message almost at the same time. 3 unidentified targets, suspected vampires, are quickly approaching the door. 4 unidentified targets appeared at the back door, quickly approaching. The voices of Iceman and Poker sounded in the headset one after another. It should be the master of these werewolves. Rog turned on the safety switch of the blaster rifle and said with a smile. The battle just now was too short for him to enjoy himself. Everyone hide on the spot and let them in. Daisy issued the latest order through the tactical headset. However, just as she had just given the order, Iceman, who was in charge of guarding the warehouse gate, sent another message. There is another unknown target. He is chasing the 3 vampires in front of him, Iceman reported in an uncertain tone. What's going on? Someone is chasing the vampires? After hearing Iceman's report, Rog suddenly felt as if he had seen a similar scene somewhere. Chasing the vampires, chasing the vampires, chasing the vampires. Iceman, what does the person who is chasing the vampires look like? Rog remembered a vampire hunter with half human and half vampire blood. Adult male, African, wearing a black trench coat and a pair of black sunglasses. His weapons are a katana, 2 semi-automatic pistols, silver darts, a wooden dagger, and, garlic counts as a weapon? Iceman asked with some uncertainty. If it weren't for the current environment, Rog would definitely think that Iceman was joking with himself. Yes, I know who is the one chasing after the vampires. In addition, garlic can be regarded as a weapon when dealing with vampires. Rog answered Iceman's question. Although Iceman's description is simple, he can basically confirm that the one who is now chasing the vampires is the Blade Warrior who has achieved the achievement of killing Dracula, the Vampire King. Of course, he is not sure whether the current Blade Warrior has achieved this achievement or not. After Rog and others all hid, the vampires chased by Blade and the 4 vampires who came from the back door finally came to the warehouse. Then they saw the werewolf corpses and human corpses on the ground. Vampires are not werewolves. They don't have the abnormal sense of smell of werewolves, so they didn't notice Rog and others hiding in the warehouse at all. Looking at the werewolf corpses on the ground, the 7 vampires were stunned for a while. However, the Blade Warrior, who was chasing after them, quickly made them regain their senses. The Blade Warrior, wearing a black trench coat, directly pulled out the 2 semi-automatic pistols on his waist and shot at these vampires. Bang 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 bang. Although it is night, the light in the warehouse is not very good, and he is wearing sunglasses. These factors do not affect Blade's shooting level. In the blink of an eye, 2 vampires were hit, and their bodies turned into a pile of black ashes like charcoal after being burned. Special bullets against vampires? Like werewolves, vampires are not afraid of ordinary firearms. If you want to kill vampires with bullets, you must use special bullets such as ultraviolet bullets or silver bullets. Although it is one against many, Blade used facts to prove what is called a unilateral crush. In less than a minute, there were only 2 vampires left in front of him. Just as the Blade Warrior planned to finish off the last 2 vampires in one go, Roger raised the rifle in his hand and fired a shot at the silver katana in the Blade Warrior's hand. Shout! The red particle beam accurately hit the katana, forcibly interrupting the Blade Warrior's attack. Rog had thought that this was just an ordinary mission, but now, he realized that this mission was much more interesting than he had imagined. Werewolves, imitators, vampires, Blade, this is obviously not an ordinary capture or kill task. You can't kill these 2 vampires, at least until I figure out what they are doing. You can't kill them. Rog, who still maintained the appearance of Minato, came out of hiding and said calmly. The role-playing game can be temporarily ended, and the rest will be handled by the Yondaime Hokage. Blade, whose face was as black as his skin, turned to look at Rog, and then directly pulled out a pistol in his left hand, trying to shoot the remaining two vampires. However, just as he raised the pistol and didn't even have time to aim, a red particle beam hit his left hand holding the gun. I won't say a word to you twice. When the Blade Warrior pulled out his gun, Roger also pulled out the explosive pistol at his waist and shot the Blade Warrior first. Being stopped twice in a row, Blade's body exuded a fierce aura. Although he doesn't do much to humans, it doesn't mean that he never kills. Anyone who dares to stop him from killing vampires or colluding with vampires, he won't let any of them go. At this time, Rog just stopped him from killing vampires, and twice. Chapter 478. The Blade Warrior looked down at the wound on his left wrist. Unlike ordinary bullet damage, the particle beam fired by the blaster is not only more damaging, but also more difficult to recover from. The high-energy particles left on the wound hindered the recovery of the wound. However, the Blade Warrior didn't take this to heart. Holding the katana in one hand, he directly attacked Rog. At this time, the Blade Warrior was full of killing intent, as if Rog was one of those cruel vampires. The half-human and half-vampire Blade Warrior perfectly combines the advantages of humans and vampires. He not only has the strength, speed, endurance, and longevity of vampires, but he is also not afraid of sunlight and ultraviolet rays like vampires. In fact, compared with the nickname of Blade Warrior, he prefers the title, Daywalker. The Blade Warrior's attack speed is very fast, no slower than that of a real vampire. But for Rog, his speed is still too slow. Even if he doesn't open his Byakugan and Sharingan, he can clearly capture every movement of the Blade Warrior and even make accurate predictions in advance. Clang! The Blade Warrior's silver katana, which was specially designed for vampires, just came in front of Rog and was easily blocked by his dagger. Overconfident, Rog said to the Blade Warrior. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the katana in the Blade Warrior's hand came towards him from another direction. Clang 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 clang. From a human point of view, the Blade Warrior is definitely a Grandmaster-level martial arts master. Whether it is the strength of the attack, the angle, the speed, the skill, the experience, and the mentality, he is first class. But the problem is that the opponent he is facing now is not a vampire who is afraid of the sun and silver, but a ninja who can crush him in all aspects. The short dagger in Rog's hand became an indestructible shield, blocking the Blade Warrior's attack one by one. No matter how the Blade Warrior attacked, the katana in his hand could not touch Rog's skin. After more than 10 seconds of the Blade Warrior's storm-like attacks, Rog used his dagger to block the katana's blade, then turned and cut the Blade Warrior's right hand tendons. For the Blade Warrior, who had amazing recovery ability, having the tendons in his right hand cut was not a serious injury. This kind of injury would take at most 5 seconds to completely recover. But the question was whether Rog would give him the time to do so. The silver katana in the Blade Warrior's hand fell to the ground. Just as he was about to retreat, Rog inserted the dagger into his chest. Rog didn't deliberately aim at the Blade Warrior's heart. What he needed now was a place where he could temporarily place the dagger. After inserting the dagger into the Blade Warrior's chest, Rog released his right hand that was holding the dagger, and then performed a few moves of Chinese ancient martial arts for the Blade Warrior. Receive, transform, and release. Rog first used 3 moves that Blade had never seen before. Spread, arms, and fall. Then, he turned around and used another 3 moves that looked simple but were very powerful. Wrap, stick, and pull. Note 1, when the Blade Warrior tried to fight back, he used 3 moves that were like moving clouds and flowing water, completely resolving the Blade Warrior's counterattack. After being hit by Rog's random combination of moves, the Blade Warrior uncontrollably retreated, his footsteps were messy, and his body was unstable. However, Rog's combo was not over. Just as the Blade Warrior retreated again and again, he followed up like the Blade Warrior's shadow, his left wrist turned slightly, and finally attached to the Blade Warrior's chest. 3 strengths, returned to 1. Although the Blade Warrior didn't understand the meaning of Rog's words, the moment he heard Rog's voice, he felt a terrible force passing from Rog's palm to his chest. Boom! The Blade Warrior, who had lost his balance, was directly blown away by Rog's palm, knocking over several containers in succession, and finally hit the wall of the warehouse heavily. Puff! Before the Blade Warrior had time to speak, he spat out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably, and then knelt on the ground weakly. Overestimating himself. At this time, the Blade Warrior really understood what Rog meant by overestimating himself. He couldn't resist at all. He and Rog were not in the same world at all. For the first time, the Blade Warrior felt that he, who had half human and half vampire blood, was so weak. After hitting the Blade Warrior, Rog turned to Daisy and others who were watching the play behind him and said, "Look at the 2 vampires, don't let them escape, and don't kill them, I have something to ask them later." After that, he walked straight towards the half-kneeling Blade Warrior. After coming to the front of the Blade Warrior, Rog squatted down and let his line of sight be on the same level as the Blade Warrior. Then, he stretched out his right hand and removed the dagger inserted in the Blade Warrior's chest. "Now, I ask, you answer, do you understand?" The dagger stained with the Blade Warrior's blood flew up and down in Rog's right hand as if it had a life of its own, drawing a dazzling knife after knife. The Blade Warrior didn't speak, but he showed his attitude with his actions. He nodded slightly, indicating that he had understood. "Your name?" "Eric Brooks." "Age?" 47. "Nationality?" "England." "Profession?" "Vampire hunter." Note 2, at this time, the Blade Warrior was a completely different person compared to when he first appeared. Basically, he answered whatever Rog asked. Although Rog knows the existence of the Blade Warrior, he knows that he is the vampire hunter who killed the vampire King Dracula. Apart from this, he doesn't know much about the Blade Warrior. Last question, did you kill Dracula? No. I've been looking for him, but I haven't really seen him yet. The Blade Warrior is no stranger to Dracula. It should be said that every vampire hunter is no stranger to Dracula. Dracula, the legendary vampire, was also recognized as the king of vampires. Killing the vampire King Dracula is not only the dream of the Blade Warrior, but also the dream of all vampire hunters. In the circle of vampire hunters, there is even such a saying. If anyone can kill Dracula, they can get all of Dracula's power, and they can live forever. After confirming that the Blade Warrior has not completed the peak of his life for the time being, Rog stood up and left without looking back. Although the Blade Warrior's strength is not bad, it is not enough for him to recruit into Konoha. For the sake of the Blade Warrior's cooperation, he doesn't mind sparing the life of the vampire hunter so that he can continue to shine for the cause he loves. From the mouth of the Blade Warrior, Rog learned a lot about vampires. For example, why did these vampires, who have been away from the world for many years, suddenly appear in Los Angeles and bring out their old enemy, the werewolves? After dealing with the Blade Warrior, Rog came to the 2 remaining vampires and said slowly, "I want to know what's going on with these werewolves. If you cooperate, I can consider letting you go." After witnessing the scene of Rog beating the Blade Warrior, the 2 vampires knew that they were definitely not the opponents of Rog. How can they beat Rog if they can't even beat the Blade Warrior? As long as their brains haven't turned into garlic, they can easily come to this conclusion. "My name is," just as one of the vampires was going to open with a self-introduction and answer the questions Rog wanted to know, Rog suddenly interrupted him. "I'm not interested in knowing your names." "Understood, I understand." Things are like this: in the beginning, a few of us. Under the pressure of death, the two vampires told the whole story, including why they appeared in Los Angeles, why they were chased by the Blade Warrior, why they came to this warehouse, and why there were so many werewolves in the warehouse. When the two vampires told everything without reservation, they looked at Rog in front of them humbly and respectfully, trying to hear the good news they wanted to hear from Rog's mouth. However, the facts were cruel, and they didn't hear the good news they wanted. Kill them, and then arrange for someone to come and deal with these bodies. Rog said expressionlessly. You didn't keep your word, you promised to let us go. Promise? When did I promise you? After thinking about it, my decision is to kill you, not let you go, understand? The two vampires reacted at this time. Rog only said that he would consider letting them go, but he didn't promise to let them go. Considering and agreeing are two completely different things. However, the two vampires didn't need to worry about these problems anymore. After Rog finished, Konoha's special forces ended their lives with the blasters in their hands. Restore the glory of the vampires. This idea is very interesting. From the two vampires, Rog learned that the vampires are preparing a big move recently. These vampires, who have been hiding from the world for many years, intend to establish a country on Earth that belongs to the vampires. Although this plan seems crazy, this plan has been unanimously agreed by all clans. The so-called all clans referred to the 8 clans that were still in existence. In order to achieve this plan, these vampires intend to resurrect the ancestor of vampires, the legendary third human, Cain. Note 3, Rog doesn't know whether Cain is the legendary third human, the first son of Adam and Eve. However, he is interested in this crazy idea of the vampires. If the vampires really fit the description of the legendary third human, Cain, it wouldn't be a difficult thing to understand. After all, in this world, hell and heaven are real. Chapter 479. Rog is convinced about the existence of hell and heaven. After all, he just came back from hell not long ago, and he personally planned Cynthia's ascension to heaven. However, this does not mean that he believes in the legend of Adam and Eve, and Cain as the third human being in the world. Heaven and hell are real, but it does not mean that the legend of Adam and Eve is true. In Norse mythology, Odin and Thor are also gods, and Asgard is the so-called god's realm. But in fact, Asgard is just a relatively special existence in the universe, and Odin and Thor are just powerful aliens. To give a very simple example, if he really believes that those legends are true, he has to believe that Odin's 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, was born after Loki became a mare. Note 1, but speaking of which, this may be true. Based on Roger's understanding of Loki, the young and frivolous Loki might really do something that would make people's jaws drop just for a moment of excitement. What's more, Loki already had some bad records. After shaking his head and dispelling these goosebump-inducing associations in his mind, Rog said to Daisy, "Go back to the headquarters directly after you've dealt with the things here. I'll take care of the rest." Okay. Although Daisy didn't know what Rog was going to do, since he had taken the initiative to speak, Daisy could only obey his instructions. After explaining to Daisy, Rog came to Blade, who had initially recovered from his injuries. "If you're not dead, get up. I'm now a little interested in the profession of vampire hunter. So, I need an experienced guide." Except for Blade, Rog doesn't know other vampire hunters. In fact, until he asked Blade just now, he didn't know that vampire hunters had developed into an independent small society. For a long time, he thought that vampire hunter was just a nominal title, like a keyboard warrior or a great onmyoji. However, reality proved that wherever there were people, there would be Jianghu. Even vampire hunters, which were the most unpopular of the unpopular professions, had their own little world. Like Daisy, Blade didn't know what Rog was going to do. But under the huge gap in strength, there was no hope of victory at all. Even if Rog's request was unreasonable, Blade Warrior could only accept this choice. As a vampire hunter with half human and half vampire blood, the Blade Warrior had his own obsession. He could not die before he killed the vampire that had to be killed. No matter what, he had to end the vampire's life with his own hands, no matter the cost. Rog and Blade left the warehouse together and began to go to Blade's secret base. "This is your means of transportation?" Glancing at the black Ducati Monster 696 parked by Blade, Rog asked casually. "Motorcycles are better than cars when hunting vampires." The Blade Warrior gave an answer. Rog didn't like to ride other men's motorcycles. After seeing that Blade's means of transportation was a motorcycle, he summoned his own means of transportation. Dodge Tomahawk. When he went to Hell with Ghost Rider Johnny, he drove a Dodge Tomahawk in Hell for a while. The excellent performance of Dodge Tomahawk gave him a good driving experience. More importantly, he hasn't found a motorcycle that suits his taste better than Dodge Tomahawk so far. Therefore, after leaving Hell, he bought a new Dodge Tomahawk. For Ghost Rider Johnny, Dodge Tomahawk was something he wanted to buy but couldn't afford. For Rog, Dodge Tomahawk was no different from a one-time use prop. After all, the life of the rich was simple and boring. Dodge Tomahawk? This car can't be legally used on the road. You'd better change. Blade didn't expect Rog to summon a Dodge Tomahawk and silently reminded him. Do you follow the traffic rules and wait for the traffic lights when you're hunting vampires? Can't be legally used on the road? What a joke. They were all people who wandered the world of transcendence, so who would care about such things? And even if traffic rules are violated, it has nothing to do with him. The illegal driver is Minato. What does it have to do with me, Rog? Rog didn't intend to change back to his original appearance. He didn't intend to give up his identity as a member of the Special Forces for the time being. Blade, who was refuted by Rog, froze for a moment, then directly started the motorcycle and drove toward his secret base. After driving the Dodge Tomahawk and following Blade in the streets of Los Angeles for a while, Rog finally arrived at Blade's secret base in Los Angeles. Similar to what he imagined, Blade wasn't the kind of superhero with a particularly good economic condition. This can be seen from the equipment he used and the environment of the base. Blade's secret base is located in the slums of southern Los Angeles, where a large number of bottom-level blacks and Mexicans live, and the security environment is far from comparable to the north. In fact, Los Angeles is only the northern part of Los Angeles. For example, Hollywood, Lakers, California Polytechnic State University, etc., are all in the north. As for the south, it is a complete slum. One city, two worlds. Los Angeles proved with facts that there is only a wall between heaven and hell. However, these have nothing to do with Rog's plan. Of course, if this plan is successful, he doesn't mind buying his own small house in Beverly Hills, a high-end residential area where Hollywood stars gather. Can you hurry up? Rog didn't enter Blade's secret base but stood at the door. How to say, the health standards of Blade's secret base didn't meet his minimum requirements, so he wasn't very willing to go in. Anyway, Blade can't run away, so he didn't bother to go in. The Blade Warrior heard Rog's urging, but he didn't answer him. He continued to make his preparations unhurriedly. Although Rog only asked Blade to bring him into the circle of vampire hunters, Blade, who has always been cautious, didn't immediately take him to the bar where vampire hunters gathered. Instead, he returned to his secret base to replenish ammunition. Before the vampires arrived at the warehouse, the Blade Warrior had already engaged in several battles. The three vampires were just bait that he deliberately let go. Most vampire hunters wouldn't dare to cast a long line to catch a big fish. But he is not an ordinary vampire hunter. When Rog finished teaching the third wave of gangsters who tried to steal the Dodge Tomahawk, Blade finally came out of his messy and poorly cleaned secret base. You can't just go in like this, your outfit is too official. Blade pointed to Rog's Special Forces uniform. "This is simple, it will be done soon." After that, Rog snapped his fingers, and a white smoke instantly enveloped him. When the white smoke dissipated in the air, Rog changed his appearance again. At this time, although he still maintained the appearance of Minato, he was no longer wearing Konoha's Special Forces uniform, but casual clothes. He used transformation jutsu to directly change his clothes, so that he completed the change in an instant. Although too fierce a fight will make transformation jutsu lose its effect, he is not going to fight now. He is just going to the bar where vampire hunters gather. Even if something happens, he doesn't think that those vampire hunters will have the strength to break the effect of his transformation jutsu. Glancing at Rog, who had completely changed his outfit, Blade didn't say anything and directly started his Ducati Monster 696 and drove towards the bar. Bat must die. This is a small bar in the slums of Los Angeles. On the surface, this bar is no different from other shabby and old bars. It is not high-end, there are few guests, and it is also in a remote location that is not easy to find with a map. However, unlike the other old bars, Batty had to die. This bar was not a place that anyone could enter. This is a bar that only vampire hunters can enter. If you are not a vampire hunter, you are not eligible to enter at all. Only vampire hunters are served, this is the rule of this bar. But rules are meant to be broken. Blade didn't explain the rules of the bar to Rog, and he also wanted to see what method Rog, with his amazing fighting power, would use to solve this problem. Looking at Blade, who had been let in by the security guard, but still stayed at the door, Rog suddenly understood. "Want to try my means?" Rog didn't let Blade do as he wished. He used the simplest and most violent way, but also the most effective way. Boom! The security guard responsible for guarding the bar's door was kicked by him, smashing the wooden door that didn't look strong and flew into the bar. Rog, who kicked the hotel's security guard, acted as if nothing had happened and walked straight to the bar's door. When passing by Blade, he slowed down a little. Without looking at Blade, he said directly, "Don't play tricks in front of me, you can't afford to pay the price." After entering the bar, Rog immediately felt the enthusiasm of these vampire hunters. Except for the security guard who was kicked by him, everyone in the bar, including the bartender, raised their pistols of different models and aimed at him who had just entered the bar. These vampire hunters are really enthusiastic. Rog swept his gaze across the unfriendly vampire hunters. He slowly raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. Golden Bind Illusion. After a snap, these vampire hunters in the bar, without exception, all became puppets that lost their ability to move. Chapter 480. There were many ways to join a new circle. Some people would choose to build a good relationship with the seniors in the circle and let the seniors in the circle recommend them to join. Some people would choose to work hard to increase their value so that they would be qualified to be invited by the circle. These two methods were not only more feasible, but also more in line with the actual situation of most people. However, in this world, there were some people who didn't act according to common sense. Rog was a typical example. Rog didn't choose these two mainstream methods, but chose the method that he was better at and more in line with his personality. Dimensionality reduction. He entered the circle with an irresistible force and made everyone in the circle shut up. Simply put, it was a bit like a professional NBA player joining the circle of a school's basketball team. Although this was a little unreasonable, this world was not a reasonable one to begin with. Seeing that this is the first time you raised your weapon against me, I forgive your ignorance. I'm not here to be your enemy, and you don't deserve to be my enemy. After the restriction is lifted, if anyone dares to point a weapon at me, you'll have to bear the consequences. After that, Rog lifted the restriction effect of the Golden Bind illusion and returned the freedom of movement to these vampire hunters. After doing this, he passed by the security guards who hadn't had time to get up and went straight to the bar counter. He said to the bartender inside, "I want all the information related to vampires in the Los Angeles area. Give me a glass of single malt supreme mellow whiskey, double the amount." When telling the bartender his request, Rog didn't forget to order himself a glass of whiskey. In this kind of old bar, it was unlikely to have expensive or limited whiskey, so he ordered the world's best-selling Irish whiskey, Supreme Mellow. Even the most ordinary bar couldn't not have Supreme Mellow whiskey. The bartender, who looked like he hadn't rested for many days and had obvious dark circles under his eyes, looked at Rog, and then poured him a glass of Supreme Mellow whiskey according to his request. "What do you want information about vampires for? You're not a vampire hunter." Although he knew that Rog wasn't an ordinary person, the bartender still asked his question. "Did I say you can ask me questions?" Luo Ge's tone was very calm, but his body exuded an astonishing pressure that seemed to have materialized. Looking at Rog, who almost had the word overbearing carved on his face, the bartender wisely shut his mouth. It didn't take long for the bartender to sort out pieces of paper of different sizes from the drawer above the bar, and then put the pile of things in front of Rog. "The information you want is all here, the oldest one is from a few months ago." After that, the bartender went to the other side of the bar counter and began to clean the glass. "Konoha's way of doing things, is always this overbearing?" the black-clothed blade warrior asked as he sat down beside Logue. He was a vampire hunter, and the information he paid attention to was only related to vampires. When he returned to the secret base to replenish his ammunition, he recognized that Rog's uniform was the uniform of Konoha's special forces. Overbearing? This is not overbearing, this is just the basic operation of Konoha. Rog gave Blade an answer that was very in line with Konoha's style. After answering Blade, he began to look through the documents provided by the bartender. How to find the information you want from a pile of messy information is a technical work. Thanks to his previous years of detective career, Rog quickly found the information he wanted. Combined with the information revealed by the two vampires, he roughly understood the complete plan of these vampires. According to the two vampires, with the cooperation of the 8 clans, they found the whereabouts of Cain. To be precise, it should be the first city that Cain once ruled. In the legend, Cain and the first city were destroyed by Noah's flood. However, the remaining 8 clans had discovered the whereabouts of Cain and the first city from the incomplete Book of Shifting, the Vampire Holy Bible. They believed that the so-called Noah's flood, used by God to wash away the sins and decay of human beings, did not destroy the first city, nor did it eliminate Cain. The first city and Cain were merely sealed in a place where no one could ever find them. After hundreds of years of long research, they finally confirmed the location of the first city and Cain's seal. Of course, the two vampires didn't know where the sealed place was. Their status in the clan was too low, so it was impossible for them to know the exact location of the sealed land. It was said that only the 8 dukes of the 8 clans knew the specific location of the seal. Within the Blood clan, according to the level of strength, they were divided into 5 levels: Duke, Marquis, Count, Viscount, and Baron. Although the Duke of the Blood clan was the highest level that vampires could reach, it was not the limit of vampires. Above the Duke, there was the existence of the King of Vampires and the Ancestor. However, the King of Vampires and the Ancestor had only appeared once, so they were excluded from the ranks of the Duke. As for the so-called Prince, it did not represent the power of the Blood clan. It was just a position, and it was not a lifelong position. In the 6 precepts of the Blood clan's secret party, there were 2 precepts: territorial power and honored guest. The position of Prince was born from these precepts. Territorial power meant that the Blood clan had the highest authority in their own territory, and other Blood clans who entered the territory had to respect this authority. In the territory, the prince was the highest ruler, and no one could go against the prince's orders. Honored guest meant that they had to respect each other's territorial power. When a Blood clan entered the prince's territory, they had to meet the prince. Without the prince's permission, they could not do anything in the territory. Simply put, when a blood clan entered the prince's territory, they had to accept the prince's rule until they left the territory. The title of duke represented strength, and the prince represented status. For example, in Los Angeles, there was a blood clan prince who ruled Los Angeles. Although the prince was the highest ruler in the territory, there were times when the territorial power, in the secret party's 6 precepts, was not useful. For example, when the duke of a clan came to the territory. No matter when, those with great power would always have some small privileges. This phenomenon was not only in the blood clan, but also in the human world. After browsing through all the information provided by the bartender, Rog put the pile of documents aside and said to Blade, "Are you interested in hunting the blood clan prince in Los Angeles together?" In a building in Los Angeles. More than 20 werewolves, more than 40 blood slaves. Is this how you guard them? Do you know that the Grand Duke will be here in a few days? A man with red eyes, wearing an expensive suit, roared at the man in front of him. This man was none other than the blood clan prince of Los Angeles, Jacob Luther. Jacob Luther was born in the Brooke clan, a blood clan count, and the current blood clan prince of Los Angeles. The young man standing in front of him was his descendant, Jamie Luther. If Jamie was not his only descendant, Jacob would have killed him. "Father, it's all because of the vampire hunter called Blade Warrior. He killed Brooke and the others. Someone saw him chasing after Brooke." Jamie Luther explained silently. "I don't want to know which vampire hunter did it. I just want to know how you are going to deal with this matter. The Grand Duke will be here soon, but all the sacrifices are dead. How do you want me to explain this to the Grand Duke?" The Grand Duke that Jacob was talking about was the only blood clan duke of the Brooke clan, William von Bering. The Brooke clan was the most suitable clan for fighting among the blood clan, and William von Bering was one of the best. It could even be said that as long as the blood clan was not completely wiped out, William von Bering's name would definitely leave a deep mark in the history of the blood clan. "Forget it, you can leave." In the end, Jacob suppressed the anger in his heart and waved his hand weakly, allowing Jamie to leave his office. After Jamie left, Jacob went to the huge floor-to-ceiling window in his office and looked at the night view of Los Angeles. Jacob had spent a few months to finally capture those 20 werewolves as sacrifices. He had even sacrificed a few of his personal guards for these werewolves, and had almost started an all-out war with them. Blood clan Duke William was going to arrive in Los Angeles in a few days, and at this critical moment, Jamie, who was in charge of guarding the werewolves and blood slaves, had actually killed them all. After all, there were still many homeless people in Los Angeles, and he could just capture some of them and turn them into blood slaves. But the problem was the werewolves. Vampire Duke William had given him a death order to capture at least 20 werewolves no matter what. Although there were still many werewolves in Los Angeles, he could not capture at least 20 werewolves in just a few days. The reason was simple. His previous capture operation had made the werewolves, who liked to form groups, even more united. Now, if he wanted to capture the werewolves, he had to start an all-out war with them. If it was in other cities, Jacob might have really risked an all-out war to capture the werewolves by force. But in Los Angeles, or rather, in the current Los Angeles, he did not dare to do so. His informant in the police had sent him a piece of bad news that he did not want to see at all. Konoha's Intelligence Bureau. The werewolf and vampire incident in Los Angeles had been reported to Konoha's Intelligence Bureau. Chapter 481. All the people and organizations in the Dark World were more or less worried about being targeted by Konoha. Although Konoha generally didn't take action against these organizations in the Dark World, as long as they were targeted by Konoha, nothing good would happen. Konoha's tyranny was not only deeply rooted in the hearts of ordinary people, but also in the Dark World. Since the establishment of Konoha, it was unknown how many organizations that didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth had been uprooted by Konoha and became a string of names in Konoha's merit book. If it wasn't to complete the task of Duke William, Jacob wouldn't violate the commandment of seclusion and take his own guards everywhere to capture those damn werewolves. Although Jacob didn't know why Grand Duke William wanted him to capture those werewolves, since it was a task personally issued by Grand Duke William, he could only bite the bullet and do it. Just as Jacob was thinking about how to catch up with the werewolves and blood slaves before Grand Duke William arrived, in the Bat Must Die bar, the Blade Warrior looked at Rog as if looking at a madman. The Vampire Prince of Los Angeles was Jacob Luther. This was known by all the vampire hunters in Los Angeles. However, no one had ever dared to have any ideas about Jacob. Jacob was the Vampire Prince of Los Angeles, which meant that he could control all the vampires in Los Angeles. In addition, Jacob's own strength was not weak. Among the vampires, although the Earl was not a high or low rank. But for those who were not vampires, a vampire Earl was equivalent to strength. Not to mention those ordinary vampire hunters, even the Blade Warrior, who was half human and half vampire, dared not say that he would be Jacob's opponent. Have you ever fought a vampire before? The Blade Warrior didn't directly refuse Rog, but instead asked Rog. No. Then do you know that Jacob is a vampire Earl? Do you know what kind of strength he has? The Blade Warrior's face sank and continued to ask. I don't know. Rog's answer was still brief. Then why do you think you can hunt Jacob? The Blade Warrior asked the last question. Obviously, he did not think that Rog had the strength to kill Jacob. Although he had been defeated by Rog not long ago, he still did not think that Rog had the strength to kill Jacob. Jacob was not one of those noob vampires in the warehouse who were only slightly stronger than normal humans. He was a true vampire warrior, a vampire count from the Brook clan. It's very simple, just because I'm Ro, just because I'm Minato. Rog almost exposed his identity, but he came back to his senses in time and reported his current identity. Minato? After hearing Rog's name, Blade showed a puzzled look. There are many powerful superheroes in Konoha, such as Abomination, Red Tank, Shockwave Girl, Quicksilver, Venom, and so on. However, Blade had never heard of a person named Namikaze Minato in Konoha. If your team is with you, you might still have a chance to kill Jacob. You alone? That's impossible. Blade said in an incomparably firm tone. He had personally experienced Rog's fighting strength, and had also seen Rog's summoning jutsu and golden bind genjutsu. But these were still not enough to convince him. From his point of view, Log was nothing more than a person with top-notch combat skills who had mastered some mysterious magic. For ordinary people, this was already considered the strength of a superhero. But to deal with the vampire Count Jacob, it was far from enough. As long as it was a vampire from the Brook clan, they basically had a good level of close combat. As for magic, there was no vampire above the Count level that couldn't do it. I can now confirm a fact, that is, people who wear sunglasses in the middle of the night have bad eyesight. Rog pointed to the sunglasses worn by Blade and said in a sarcastic tone. I'm not the opponent of a vampire Count, are you kidding me? This is an insult to me. Earth, Hell, Asgard, Warnerheim, Jotunheim, Land of Nothingness, Xander, Sokka, Hala, Symbiote Mother Planet, wherever he went, there was no place where he didn't leave his name. But now, in an old tavern in Los Angeles, he was publicly doubted by the Blade Warrior. I thought you would be better than those vampire hunters, but I didn't expect you to be as ignorant as them. But it doesn't matter, I don't blame you. After that, Rog drank the glass of Zune May mellow whiskey in one gulp. Dare to make a bet with me, this is a commission scroll, as long as you commission me to kill Jacob, I can bring his head to you within an hour. At this time, Rog was like a demon from hell, tempting Blade. What's the bet? Although Blade felt that something was wrong, he couldn't tell what exactly was wrong. It's very simple, if I lose, you can make any conditions, even if you want Konoha to help you kill vampires. But, if you lose, you have to go back to Konoha with me and cooperate with my scientists to do a little experiment. Don't worry, it won't be an inhumane experiment. At most, I'll help you do a physical examination and draw blood. Rog said the content of the bet. After he finished the bet, Blade didn't answer him, but the other vampire hunters in the bar showed a vigilant look. Konoha. This overbearing guy is actually from Konoha. When Blade asked Rog if Konoha had always been so overbearing, he deliberately lowered his voice, so no one heard their conversation except for the two of them. But now, Rog deliberately said the bet loudly so that the vampire hunters around him could hear the content of the bet. He did this, of course, not because he was bored, but because he had his own purpose. With the exception of the Blade Warrior, the vampire hunters in the bar were all trash. Rog didn't look down on their work, but simply looked down on their strength. But Blade was different, he belonged to the kind of existence with a little potential. More importantly, Konoha lacked talents like Blade. Yes, Blade was a talent. His strength, when compared to Konoha, was not outstanding. However, due to his special bloodline, he was destined to be a rare talent. Half human, half vampire, this kind of mixed bloodline sounded simple, but it was not easy to achieve at all. Perfectly combining the advantages of two bloodlines was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Chapter 482. If Rog can study how the different bloodlines complement each other perfectly, then he can try the experiment that he wanted to do for a long time but never had the chance to do it. Commission? He didn't know why, but after seeing Rog's commission scroll, Blade suddenly felt that this Konoha Special Force member, who claimed to be Minato, gave him the feeling of meeting Konoha's fourth Hokage. It is said that the fourth Hokage had obsessive-compulsive disorder when he was a private investigator. Is this a special tradition of Konoha's intelligence agency? Blade opened the blank commission scroll and carefully checked it, and this thought came to his mind involuntarily. Don't worry, I have a good reputation in the industry. By the way, I'll tell you one thing, my commission completion rate is 100%. As long as you sign the scroll, you can see Jacob's head in front of you within an hour. How about it? Simple enough. Rog knew that Blade wouldn't believe him so easily, but he wasn't worried about the final result. Is the bet the reward? After thinking about it for a few seconds, Blade asked again. No. The bet is the bet, and the reward is the reward, they are two different things. Although the bet could also be the reward, Rog didn't intend to do so. The bet was just to make Blade willing to follow him back to Konoha to do the experiment. If the bet was the reward, it would make the commission incomplete for a long time, leading him to be unable to accept other commissions before the experiment was completed. What's the reward? After hearing Rog's answer, Blade's face showed a look of vigilance. It's very simple, just help me pay for that glass of wine. Rog said a reward that was completely beyond Blade's imagination. You're not kidding me, are you? I, Minato, never joke about commissions. Looking at the serious expression on Roger's face, Blade finally decided to sign the commission reward. Mission details: bring the head of vampire Count Jacob Luther to the Blade Warrior. Mission status: incomplete. Mission reward: 30 ninja coins. As Rog expected, Blade's commission successfully passed the system's judgment, and the system gave a commission reward that was not high. I'll accept your request. After receiving the commission scroll from Blade's hand, Rog glanced at the reward written on it. $20. An ordinary glass of Zune May mellow whiskey couldn't be that expensive. Strictly speaking, the reward given by Blade was already a premium. You can exchange your experience with your peers here, I'll be back soon. As soon as he finished speaking, Rog's body shone with a brilliant aurora-like light, and then he completely disappeared. At this time, Jacob couldn't have imagined that someone would pay $20 for his life. Moreover, the assassin was a ninja's killer. As the vampire prince of Los he has a lot of properties in Los. This unknown building is one of them. Whenever late at night, Jacob likes to hold a cup of fresh drink that has just been taken out of the girl's body, with some residual warmth, and stand alone in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in his office, admiring the night view of Los Angeles that he never gets tired of. But tonight, Jacob obviously didn't have such leisure time. He still stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking into the distance. However, he wasn't thinking about the glory of the vampire race or his own life experiences. Instead, he was thinking about how to capture at least 20 active werewolves before the vampire Duke, Grand Duke William, arrived. Jacob would never have thought that there would be a time when he would miss these old enemies so much. If he could, he even hoped that the number of werewolves in Los Angeles could increase several times. It would be best if they were young werewolves who liked to be independent and extremely rejected group behavior. But he knew that this kind of thing could only be imagined in his mind. Although werewolves are crazier than vampires, they are not crazy to the point of being irrational. Just after Jacob sighed for who knows how many times tonight, a brilliant aurora-like light lit up 4 or 5 meters behind him. Then, Rog, who still maintained the appearance of Minato, appeared in the office. Almost at the moment when the light of quantum transmission lit up, Jacob sensed the arrival of Rog. "Who are you?" Jacob exuded a fierce aura, and asked in a cold voice. "Konoha, Minato." Jacob couldn't know who Minato was, so Rog deliberately added the prefix of Konoha. Konoha. If there was anyone Jacob didn't want to see right now, it was definitely Konoha's people, even 2 places higher than Duke William. As for the second place, of course, it was his unaccomplished descendant, James, who would only cause him trouble. We vampires have never had disputes with Konoha, and we don't intend to be enemies with Konoha. With Jacob's identity, vaguely expressing concessions was the limit of what he could do. "I didn't come here for business." While answering Jacob, Rog used chakra to perceive Jacob's situation. Worthy of being a vampire count, his life force was very high. His energy intensity was also not weak, and he should be proficient in a lot of vampire magic. By perceiving Jacob's life force and energy intensity, Rog roughly judged his strength. "What do you mean?" Jacob suddenly had a bad intuition. "Someone is willing to pay for your head." "He's very willing to pay." Note 1, Rog said casually, as if the person standing in front of him wasn't a vampire count, but a slave who couldn't resist at all. "Ha ha ha. Pay for my head, I want to know if you are qualified to take the money. Tell me, let me see how much my head is worth." Jacob made a disdainful laugh, drank the bright red liquid in the glass, and then gently put the empty glass on the desk. $20. "What?" "Your head is only worth $20. Rog said the Blade Warrior's reward. Then, he saw Jacob's pale face turn red like a drunkard's. "You are Namikaze Minato, right? Very good, you have successfully angered a vampire count. I can assure you that I will not kill you. I will turn you into the lowest blood slave, so that your soul will never rest in peace." Jacob suppressed his anger, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. "Is that so? If you can do it, I won't mind." Rog did not take Jacob's threat to heart. A vampire count's threat was not a threat at all. Just as Roger finished speaking, Jacob appeared in front of him like a ghost. Jacob's right hand, which was as white as a corpse's, turned into a sharp claw and grabbed at Roger's heart. Shadow Claw. In the face of Jacob's ferocious attack, Roger did not dodge. It was as if he could not react in time. However, just as Jacob's claw was about to touch Rog, an orange flame appeared out of thin air in front of Rog, helping him block Jacob's attack. "What is this?" The moment the orange-red flame appeared, Jacob realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late. The orange flame, which looked no different from ordinary flames, instantly swallowed his right hand. Although Jacob immediately urged the blood power in his body to protect his right hand, it did not change the fact that his right hand was quickly burned to ashes. Hellfire. As a member of the blood race, Jacob was no stranger to hellfire. Although the blood clan had a recovery ability that was far superior to that of ordinary people, this kind of extraordinary recovery ability was not always effective. For example, when facing hellfire. With his right hand burned to ashes, Jacob did not hesitate, and immediately retreated, trying to open the distance between him and Rog. The idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. As soon as Jacob thought of retreating, Rog's right hand grabbed his neck, lifting him up. Bat incarnation. The blood power in Jacob's body surged again, and he cast one of the signature spells of the blood clan. Just as Jacob's body began to transform into numerous black bats, a ball of hellfire emerged from Log's right hand, completely enveloping Jacob's body. The black bats did not have time to take off, and they were burned to nothingness by the hellfire. You want to leave so soon? That's not good. Bat incarnation was not a spell used to attack, but it was a spell used to avoid damage or escape. Depending on the strength of the user, the number of bats they could transform into was also different. If a vampire duke was proficient in magic, it would not be difficult for him to transform into thousands of bats at once. Who the hell are you? When Log's hellfire forcefully destroyed his bat incarnation, Jacob knew that he was most likely going to be in trouble tonight. I just said, my name is Namikaze Minato. Someone offered $20 for your head, so I came here. After answering Jacob's last question, Rog did not continue to waste time on Jacob, and burned his body from the neck down to ashes. The amazing vitality of the blood clan was once again reflected at this time. Even if only his head was left, Jacob still did not die immediately. If he could return to the clan's blood pool in time, he could recover with only his head left. Unfortunately, he would not have such an opportunity. Holding Jacob's head, Rog once again used quantum transmission, and then completely disappeared. Chapter 483. Although hellfire doesn't have any holy attributes, it's no worse than the holy fire of heaven when used to deal with dark creatures such as vampires and werewolves. The only difference is that holy fire can purify the enemy's soul, while hellfire completely annihilates the enemy's soul. Creatures killed by hellfire won't even be qualified to go to hell. With Jacob's head, Rog teleported back to the "Bat Must Die" bar. The head you want, I brought it back. From Rog's disappearance to his reappearance, it was less than 5 minutes. At this time, Blade hadn't even finished his first glass of whiskey. This is Jacob? Watching Rog put Jacob's head on the bar without changing his expression, Blade showed an unbelievable look. As if to further confirm that he was not mistaken, Blade took off the black sunglasses that he would never take off even in battle. It's really Jacob. Jacob Luther, the vampire prince of Los Angeles and the vampire count of the Brook clan, was placed on the bar. Blade, who took off his sunglasses, looked at Jacob's head repeatedly for a few minutes, and finally took Jacob's head and placed it in front of him. It turned out to be you, a lowly mixed blood. Lowly mixed blood really can't come up to the table, even revenge is just a pretense. Although Jacob didn't have most of his body, the vitality of the vampire was perfectly displayed at this time, so that he still kept his mind. Revenge? After hearing Jacob's words, Rog turned his head and glanced at Blade. It turned out that they were defeated before, and judging from Jacob's performance at this time, Blade suffered a lot. I just want to end your life with my own hands. It doesn't matter to me whether I defeated you or not. The Blade warrior put on the pair of black sunglasses that never left his body and said with a cold face. I have paid for that drink for you. When the matter here is over, I will go to Konoha with you. After that, the Blade warrior casually took a rag from the bar and spread it out in a square. The original color of the rag could no longer be seen. Then, he picked up Jacob's head and put it in the center of the rag. After completely wrapping up Jacob's head, the Blade Warrior took out a phone with an unknown number of buttons and put it in front of Roger. "Call the number on it and you can find me." After leaving the phone, the Blade Warrior picked up Jacob's head and left the bar without looking back. After Blade left, Rog opened the system and took a look. Ninja coins not consumed, 940. The commission was completed smoothly, and the system also sent the reward for the first time. Although the reward for this commission is only 30 ninja coins, Rog has no dissatisfaction. The difficulty of this commission is infinitely close to 0. It can even be said that the 30 ninja coins are free. Strictly speaking, it can't be said that it's free. After all, he still had to bear the upcoming risks, such as the revenge of the blood breeds. "Father, can I come in?" Jamie Luther, who was driven out of the office by Jacob, was like a guard at this time, holding a silver tray. In the glass on the tray, there was the blood of Jacob's favorite 16-year-old girl. After being scolded by Jacob, the more Jamie thought about it, the more he felt like he had to do something. So, he returned to his office and racked his brain to come up with a perfect plan. Of course, this perfect plan is just Jamie Luther's own idea. Although he is the only descendant of Jacob and has the strength of a vampire viscount. But ever since he was born, he had never experienced a proper battle, let alone a battle with his nemesis, the werewolves. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how perfect his perfect plan to capture the werewolves would be. "Father, I can make up the number of werewolves before Grand Duke William arrives. Can I come in and explain it to you in detail?" Jamie Luther, who didn't get a response for a long time, asked again and said his purpose. Under normal circumstances, no matter how angry Jacob was, he would let Jamie enter the office. However, after waiting patiently for a few minutes, Jamie still didn't hear Jacob's reply. If he had a little bit of experience, he would have realized that something was wrong. But this noble vampire viscount didn't react at all. He still stood at the door like a fool, waiting for Jacob's agreement. Los Angeles, Beverly Hills Hotel, 5-star suite. After the Blade Warrior left Bat Must Die, Rog also left. Bat Must Die was an old bar that didn't suit his taste. So, he came to the famous Beverly Hills Hotel and booked a 5-star suite here for a week. Beverly Hills Hotel is a famous 5-star diamond-free hotel in Los Angeles. Since it opened in 1912, it has been popular with celebrities. Business tycoons, movie stars, royal family members, leaders of various countries, and so on, have frequently visited here. Beverly Hills Hotel is located in the most famous city in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, covering an area of about 12 acres. Not far from the hotel is the famous Wilshire Boulevard. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Rog didn't use his real identity to check in. Instead, he used a legal, fake identity specially registered by Konoha to check in. Although the Blade Warrior's commission was completed, he didn't plan to leave Los Angeles immediately. He didn't have any conflicts with the vampires, and the vampires had always been well-behaved and abided by the commandment of seclusion. However, after knowing about Kane, the first city, and the reappearance of the glory of the vampires, he wouldn't easily leave here. It didn't matter whether the vampires provoked Konoha or not. What was important was that he was interested in the vampires. According to the 2 unlucky vampires, in order to restore the glory of the vampires, the 8 dukes of the 8 major clans used the legendary 13 sacred artifacts of the vampires. Whether the 13 sacred artifacts of the vampires were used to unlock the seal of Cain and the first city, Rog wasn't sure yet. Although the 2 vampires swore that what they said was true, considering their status in the clans, Rog felt that the authenticity of the news had yet to be confirmed. The news could be fake, but one thing was true. That was, the 13 sacred artifacts of the vampires were real. As a ninja with some strength, Rog and the father of the gods, Odin, had the same hobby. They took treasures from the enemy and put them in their own collection room. The box of ice, the eternal fire, the tesseract, and so on in the treasury of the Asgard palace were all obtained in this way. Putting aside whether or not they could be used, just the fact that these treasures were placed there was enough to make people happy. Collector Tanya Divan was a typical example of this. And this hobby had nothing to do with the level of strength. Even ordinary people would have a similar, collecting hobby. The only difference was that the items they collected were different. For example, some people like to hoard figurines, some like to hoard Lego, and some like to hoard money. While thinking about how to make the 13 sacred artifacts of the vampires his own collection, Rog took out the phone left by the Blade Warrior and took out the SIM card inside. Then, he threw this outdated phone into the trash can and inserted the phone card into the latest fruit phone. After doing this, he summoned a shadow clone and gave the special bullets he bought from Bat Must Die to the shadow clone. Since he was going to deal with the vampires, it was reasonable to prepare some weapons to deal with the vampires. When the shadow clone returned to Konoha with the silver bullets and ultraviolet bullets, Rog picked up the phone in the room and called for room service. The Beverly Hills Hotel was famous for its luxurious rooms and exemplary hotel service. Rog, who hadn't eaten for a night, certainly wouldn't let himself go to bed hungry. The next morning, Rog, who had changed into casual clothes, drove a Chevrolet SUV out of the hotel. This Chevrolet SUV wasn't a psychic one. He had rented it from the hotel. As for why he didn't drive his own sports car, the reason was simple. The place he was going to next was not suitable for a sports car. Last night, outside the secret base of the Blade Warrior, in less than 10 minutes, he met 3 waves of gangsters who tried to steal his Dodge Tomahawk. In order to avoid this kind of thing, he chose a more ordinary SUV. I don't believe that you won't even let go of a car worth tens of thousands of dollars. From the prosperous Beverly Hills Hotel all the way to the gate of the Blade Warrior's secret base, Rog once again saw the special scene of 2 worlds in one city of Los Angeles. "I'm at your door, come out." Rog didn't tell the Blade Warrior what he was going to do next. With the character of the Blade Warrior, even if he just asked him for lunch, he would bring all his weapons and equipment. A few minutes later, Rog saw the Blade Warrior, who was obviously not as energetic as last night. "Aren't you not afraid of the sun? How can this happen?" Rog asked curiously. "Not afraid doesn't mean I like it." The Blade Warrior with sunglasses answered with a blank expression. "You don't like the sun, then the vampire must dislike it even more." After that, Rog started the car and left the slum where the security environment was only a little better than Hell's Kitchen. The Blade Warrior didn't ask where Rog was going to take him. Anyway, it didn't matter where they went. However, the Blade Warrior would never have thought that the place Rog was going to take him to was the vampire's castle. You're tuning in to the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.